If you enjoyed today's video, please consider subscribing to the channel. When you do, make sure you hit the notification bell. That means that you will be informed of when a new video has been released. If you would like to take that support one step further, you can do that via Patreon, which is an optional monthly service. You can donate money towards the channel, or you can go over to Ko-fi.com, and for the price of a coffee you can help donate towards the channel as well. Links for all of those will be in the description of the video, and without further ado, enjoy the video. Right, yeah. Are we all ready? Yeah,
let's go.
Cool, brilliant stuff. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you happen to be listening to another episode of the Non League Nosh. I am James, and as always, I'm joined by my colleague and good friend Adam. How are you doing this evening, sir? You well?
Yeah, very good, thank you. You?
Good. Yeah, not bad actually. Had a very entertaining day, to say the least. Took the little man for his TB injections this morning. Right. So he cried, I cried. Got into the car park, showed him a couple of cars and a couple of birds, tweeted he was easily distracted and back to normal. But other than that, relatively calmful day, I suppose. What about you?
I've actually had one of the more quiet days I've had in a while because Finley was at nursery. So you know how things are. It's when you get a peaceful day, you try and catch up.
Yeah, 100%.
And I've had a lot to catch up on because he's been a pain lately. Kids are getting sick of it, mate. Kids are getting sick of it.
I know. I think lockdown's starting to get to everyone, isn't it? Really.
Yep.
Especially kids. I think they're often forgotten about, to be honest. In amongst this, everyone's kind of so concentrated on what's going on in terms of jobs and economy and all that kind of stuff like that. But kids often are forgotten, aren't they? Really?
My little one's got a better social life than most people I know, and for him to only have seen me for like 6 weeks straight, I feel sorry for him. Painful.
Couldn't possibly comment. But Adam, as normal now on the podcast, we are not alone. We are joined by yet another guest on the show. I'm delighted to be able to say that we have ex-Norwich and Leicester player and now Leicester joint manager, Darren Eadie. Darren, how are you, mate? You well?
Yeah, very well. The one thing I would first say is I hate the word ex. I always have done for some reason. Ex-footballer, I just hate it. Ex-wife, it's all. It's very negative. I prefer former, if you don't mind. That'll be all right.
Former. We'll go with former then. Former.
Go former. Pick that one up.
But you're keeping well anyway.
Yeah, very good. Same as everybody else is really trying to maintain some kind of sanity during these kind of very strange times. Without work and kind of being put on furlough at the minute with my work. And then when I'm not doing that, I'm normally doing lots of football stuff in terms of media-wise. But of course, that's all on the back burner as well. So yeah, it's been a pretty strange time because I've had not much to be able to fill my time with, which is really quite unusual. And I think anybody, whether you're an adult or a child, I think you need some kind of routine, and it's been difficult trying to find one for such a long period of time without actually having some kind of focus.
Yeah, definitely. We've spoken about that many times, haven't we, Adam? Getting into the routine, and I think you've quite openly said that at the beginning of all of this, you were kind of struggling to get yourself into that.
Oh, massively, absolutely massively. I just absolutely lost my way. But I've kind of given myself a bit of a wobble, and I'm back on the straight and narrow as to what I should be doing every day now.
Well, it's the corona coaster, isn't it? What everybody keeps talking about. I mean, it is a thing. I do believe it. There's days where you feel fine and you feel great and you can get on with stuff, and there's days we literally just feel like you can't be bothered to get out of bed. I think that's it's kind of been it's a really good saying that someone's kind of introduced the corona coaster, and I think we are riding it at the minute. It's difficult. It is difficult, and it's difficult because everybody's circumstances are different as well. Although we're all isolated. Essentially, we're all sort of having different kind of lifestyles and different things to face during these times, and it's. I think it'll hopefully bring out the best in some of us. Perhaps end up with a little bit more kindness out of it. But my fear is everything will just go back to normal after a couple of months, and everybody will be back to normal and trying to stamp on each other and get what they need out of life. So call me a bit of a skepticism, but I don't know. That's just where I kind of see it going.
No, I said exactly the same thing to my wife the other day. I just wonder how long it will be before things kind of go back to normal. Well, I mean, whatever normal was prior to all of this kind of going on. But yeah, 100% right. To be honest, I don't honestly know. You might see a few months of, you know, the new normal, so to speak, and then yeah, just don't know really. It depends on how long it's all going to last for. That's the problem. This is the big thing that nobody truly knows, especially in this country. But I don't know if you saw this, Adam. Justin Wally, who we had on the show earlier, posted out a picture of him in the pub. Just for clarity, and he's living in was it Latvia? Yeah, and they've completely gone the complete opposite of what we're doing in the UK, and they've been back to normal, relatively speaking, for a couple of weeks now, haven't they?
Yeah, I think they're the biggest buffet chain restaurant in Latvia. It's called Lido or something. Reopened, and he showed a picture of how they've like changed it all round to accommodate people. So it's only tables of twos unless you're a family, and the tables are miles apart from each other. But he just said the normality of just places like buffet restaurants opening is a huge sign of a return to normal, albeit he's talking from a country that controlled things very well.
Yeah, I think as well, normality isn't going to be normality anymore. I think, you know, back to what is perceived as what was normal, I think will seem a bit strange to everybody. Even just watching things on the telly, and you see I've been watching kind of some classic football matches and stuff like that, and you see people kind of shaking hands before the game and hugging on goal celebrations, and you know, people watching films and seeing people being close in films. It's just like, just all feels a bit weird even seeing it on the telly. So I think it'll take some real time to kind of adjust back to normal, what, you know, that was perceived as normal. But you know, the quicker we can get there, the better, I guess.
I think, to be honest, Darren, the biggest sign of that, actually, for the whole back to normal and longer term things, was stated today. It was released by Cambridge University that they won't now go back to having standard lectures. They're just going to be online lectures only for the next year.
Yeah.
All the way up until the end of the next educational year.
Yeah, so, and there will be a lot of good things that come out of it. I think a lot of businesses, you know, we all have opinions on it, but you know, there are a lot of businesses which were struggling before they went into this, and you know, good businesses will survive. Businesses that unfortunately just started up, it will be very difficult for them, but there will be new opportunities for everybody. You know, I'm a big believer in, you know, perhaps this is pressing a bit of a reset on the whole world, and you know, we'll kind of start again, and things are a bit more of a level playing field, and I think people will be a little bit more careful with their money, careful with their investments, and perhaps, you know, better businesses will come out of it. I don't know, because I think a lot of businesses certainly can use it as an excuse to get rid of some staff. But you know, I am a believer. I hope we will come out kinder and everything will be better. But in terms of football as well, I hope football comes out in a better place. It's going to go in, but I think we're probably 2 or 3 generations too far ahead now. I think, you know, 30, 40 years ago, I think perhaps something like this would happen not long after, you know, or even 50, 60 years ago, and something that happened not long after the World War II. I think people could have readjusted and could have clawed it back. I think it's gone so far now, and people have gone so far the other way in terms of their mentalities of trying to be the best they can be, and actually, you know, kind of stepping on other people to get what they want. And I think it's become a very selfish world. And I think we've gone too far. I just don't think we'll ever get back to the stage where it will be enough kindness to bring that back. I think that generation's gone, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's hard to really disagree with that, Adam.
Yeah, I very much agree with it. Yeah. I think when you look at the wider state of football at the moment, and everything that's involved in running a football club, and especially at the top tier,
it's showing its true colours at the moment, isn't it?
Oh, 100%. Like, and it's not only showing them; it's absolutely nailing them to the mast, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. But we'll get more into that in just a moment, because I really want to get your thoughts on what is going on, especially the couple of topics to do with the top of the game, Darren, in just a moment. But before we get into that, we always start off these podcasts with a few icebreaker questions, just so that people can get to know you a little bit better. So I don't know if you've done any prep and you know the questions that are already coming, but I'm going to hit you with the first one. Chinese or Indian? What's your preference?
Oh, definitely Chinese. Only because Indian food all looks the same, and I get a little bit put off by it. For me, it's Chinese all the way. Although I used to eat. See, whenever I played, I used to have a Chinese after every match I played. On a Saturday night after I played a game, that'd be my kind of standard food. Post match would be a Chinese. Well, I say Chinese, it'd always be the same thing. It'd be dry spare ribs, chips, and curry sauce. So not technically a Chinese, but I used to get it from the Chinese takeaway.
We had this discussion a couple of weeks ago. I don't know if you're the same. Well, you just said it there. My wife always gets the menu out, and I'm just like, what is the point? You know what you're going to order. I know what I'm going to order. There's literally no point looking at the menu. It's just a complete and utter waste of time.
And with Chinese, there's 400 items on the menu, and we only ever have 3.
Yeah. Well, it almost gets a little bit embarrassing because I used to do it on such an often, such an occasion that when I'd ring up the Chinese, obviously they got to get to know you after a while. Yeah. And I still placed the same order every single time. Rather than just saying I'll have the usual, I went through the rigmarole of saying exactly what I wanted every single time, which kind of felt a bit pointless in the end, but they played along with it. So perhaps they were in the background just writing it down before I even said it.
Oh, no. I used to do that in Greg's, but I stopped going there one day after I walked in the door and the lady put the chocolate muffin and the sausage roll in the bag and said how much it was. I thought that enough's enough.
Yeah, time to stop. Tea or coffee?
Tea, definitely, all day long. I'm actually drinking a cuppa now. I do like a cup of tea. I don't like coffee at all. One, because it makes your wee smell sugar puffs. 2, I think it needs to go to the toilet a lot. And it tastes like crap. So I go for tea every single time.
Oh, just when I thought, man, you could be friends, Darren.
You're not a... Don't tell me you're like a mocha latte bloke or something like that, are you? With a shot of vanilla in it or something like that.
No. Just the standard white coffee will do me fine. I'm not into anything fancy. To be honest, I did go through a bit of an addiction to like Costa coffee, and you just after a while you just realise how much you're wasting, and just a standard coffee at home will do you absolutely fine. But yeah, there we go. Right, this one always causes controversy. Your favourite biscuit to dunk?
Oh, a hobnob, without a doubt. Always a chocolate hobnob, because they've got resilience, haven't they? I mean, I think it's Peter Kay that made a point of that a few years back in one of his sketches, about how they're a survivor. It doesn't matter how many times you dunk them, they keep coming back for more. They'll drain half your tea away, but they are good. They're good. Yeah, no, they're definitely the ones. When I was a kid, I used to go through packets of biscuits. My mum always used to say, but I don't eat that many biscuits. And I think I've had my lifetime share as a child. I'd literally go through a pack of biscuits in an evening with a couple of cups of tea. So yeah, I'm trying to limit it now, but no, yeah, definitely a chocolate hobnob.
Not gonna lie, the temptation at the moment, just like when you are in lockdown, just when you're sitting there with the packet open, just to kind of go one after the other. I have to sort of like put three on the side and then put them back in the cupboard. Otherwise, I will just eat.
The best thing to do is limit to how much fluid you've got in your cup. So if it drains all if you've still got fluid left in your cup, keep dunking them. But if you run out of fluid, then don't eat any more. I'm sure with the chocolate hobnob, you ain't going to get more than 4 biscuits, I don't reckon, with a proper dunk. If you give them a little bit of time in there to soak up.
Adam, you'd be an expert on that one.
Yeah, I mean, I've still got this packet. I've still got some left. I started 1/4 kilogram of Lotus Biscoff the other night when we were editing 3 nights ago. And I've still got some left.
That's impressive.
They don't count, though, because they're so small. 4 of them counts as 1 chocolate hobnob, doesn't it? Surely. Probably
absolutely
more than
nailed it. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah. And they're the little ones you get in the hairdressers and stuff, isn't it? Is it those type of ones?
Yeah. I don't know about my hairdressers. My barber's lucky if he gives you change.
Actually, I've been cutting my own hair. Where do you actually buy them from? Is there like a wholesale hairdresser's place you go to get your Biscoff?
Oh, you can get them off Amazon.
Oh yeah, well that's the obvious place I should have thought of.
Yeah, you can get kilograms of them off Amazon.
Jesus. There you go. Tip for everyone listening: go to Amazon and buy them. Favorite alcoholic drink? What should go to on a night out?
Oh. Well, I guess I'm from the West Country originally, and I was kind of brought up on scrumpy cider, so that's kind of my go-to drink. I normally start off with a few ciders, and then slip into the gin. So I do love a gin as well. So Never liked lager, never have done. Never liked bitter or beer. Never liked Guinness. Don't really like whiskies or any other shorts. Just gin and cider. That'll do me.
There you go. Gin and cider. Gin's become very popular over the years. I've never tried it, to be honest with you, but I will.
I liked it before it's popular. That's what I keep saying.
You started the trend.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. Good stuff. Instagram or Twitter?
Instagram, I think. No, sorry, Twitter. I think. I only started Instagram probably a couple of years ago now, I would say. I still can't really get the hang of all these hashtags. So Twitter's good because I like the instant about Twitter. I know it's not called Instagram, it's called Twitter, but the kind of it's it's pretty fast paced, which I quite like. And in terms of the work I do, I always find Twitter's a good source of getting information out there to the people I need it to sort of relatively quickly. Yeah,
I think you're the same, aren't you, Adam? You've recently got into Instagram probably over the last month or so.
Yeah, only because JB's helping us out with the Coaching 101 and he knows quite a bit about Instagram, it seems. So I'm learning. But I've got to be honest, the whole hashtagging thing has taught me how you just go on a website, type something in, and it gives you the top 30, and that seems to win.
Well, it's mad. You literally can be talking about anything, but as long as you put the right hashtags, it appears you're there. But I don't even add any hashtags now on Instagram, so it's almost a pointless post. Really?
We're putting up stuff about football. You just put hashtag boobs in it. You get so many people interested.
I have to try that one.
Giving the game away, Adam. Giving the game away. Favourite type of music?
Oh, I like all types of music. Really, I'm not a big, I'm not particularly into one kind of genre. I guess. I suppose when I was playing, the kind of era I played in, my sort of peak times was kind of 90s R&B. So it was always a little bit of, sounds terrible to say, a bit of R. Kelly, which is probably not the right one to admit to right now.
Yeah, slightly controversial, yeah.
Yeah, a bit of Usher, someone like that. So 90s R&B, I guess, was kind of my bag back in the day. But no, I'll listen to anything. My dad was a massive Queen fan.
Greatest band.
Yeah, so I've just, watching them since been in lockdown and stuff, watching their live shows at Wembley and things like that. It's just amazing.
Yeah, no, without a doubt, Queen are the greatest band ever. It's not even a debate in my eyes. Favourite box set?
It's got to be Tyson. I remember, again, sort of the 90s and late 80s, but particularly the 90s when he was at his pomp. He was just, I think I liked someone who was just a pure animal. And I know eventually that kind of, sort of was his downfall in the end. But he was just relentless, just the power of the bloke and the speed for he wasn't a tall man. I met him once. He was I'm only 5'8", but he wasn't that much taller than me. But he was as wide as he was tall. And just to say the speed he had, I think was just incredible. And watching his knockouts, I think that's probably and he was the man on top of this game at the time. So it's weird most to watch boxing as well when you get something like that, because I used to hate seeing them lose. And I know most of the best boxers in the world, throughout time have always lost at some point. Yeah, but I used to get despondent if they lose.
Yeah, definitely. Favorite film? What's your go-to?
Oh, that's tough.
This one always sums everyone, doesn't it?
See, the one what springs to mind, which is I guess is a totally and utterly ridiculous film, but something that I like to put on if I want to have a good laugh. It's Dumb and Dumber. That was kind of in the 90s when I watched that. I know every single word of every single scene. So I think I'm going to have to go for that. Me and my brother-in-law working with at Leicester now, Chris Wigger. We often still send little quotes to each other during the film. If there's a particular moment where we're having a discussion and it seems like we can slip in a Dumb and Dumber line, it feels right. Yeah. I haven't managed to get into any team talks yet, but I think that could be next.
There you go. I'm exactly the same with Hot Fuzz. Me and a mate are just exactly the same. Just no matter what you're doing, any situation, a Hot Fuzz line is coming out at some point of the day.
Always.
Also, cats or dogs?
Oh, dogs, 100%. Don't like cats.
Other than football, your favourite sport?
Ooh. That's rugby, probably. Come from the West Country, I played a lot of rugby before I started to play football. So I didn't start playing football till quite late. Yeah. And I was playing for Bath Colts as a scrum half. Wow. Again, I was quick and had quick feet and could run fast. So they just chuck me the ball and tell me to run, a bit like Forrest Gump in just chuck him the ball and run. So I played a lot of rugby, but then I only managed to get to 5'8". So I thought that. Well, actually, the story behind that was I remember when I was younger. So I was at Bath Colts, and I started at Swindon Town as a youngster originally. And I was about 11 at the time, and my mum always reminds me of it. Well, she did when she was alive. She died, unfortunately, a couple of years ago. But she used to say when I was 11, she said to me, "Look, you're playing rugby and you're playing football, and they don't really kind of, you're doing okay with managing both now, but at some point you're going to have to make a decision as to what you think you might want to do." Because we can only, my mum and dad were both worked jobs, and we lived in a council house. They had to ship me around the country. They couldn't do both. They had to make sure that they put everything into one really. And my mum still said, she said to me all the time, she said, I made this conscious decision at 11 to choose football because there was more money in it. Wow. Terribly selfish, but it was just, I think I saw not the riches of football because it wasn't particularly at that time, but it seemed to me a better career path. And actually, I mean, let's be honest, look at the size of me against someone like Martin Johnson. There's only one winner. So I think I made the right choice.
Yeah. I think even with hindsight, you probably did make the right choice in that one. I'm going to ask one, and I don't know whether or not you might have an answer to this one, but do you prefer FIFA or Football Manager?
Don't play any of them.
No?
Never played a football game in my life. I know a lot of the players play them now, but I've never interested me. Just never got into it. My son started playing it when he was young, and I tried to play him for a little while and just got frustrated by it all.
Have you seen about that lad at Peterborough, Darren?
No, what's that?
A pro at Peterborough that since he's been laid off by the club whilst there's no games, he's decided to turn into a professional Football Manager player, like streaming every night and everything.
Really? Well, it's weird. My son, he's 22 now, and his girlfriend, but they do something similar. They do it. I don't know what it's called. I can't remember what they told me it's called. But they're doing something similar now, where they actually get people to subscribe to their channel to watch them play games. And I'm like, what's wrong with people? Why are they sitting there paying to watch other people play games? I don't get it. But whatever. There are some gamers out there we know that make absolute fortunes, and of course with social media and YouTubers and Instagrammers, social media is a lot of money to be made if you can get it right.
Oh yeah, 100%. The amount of like multi-millionaires that are around nowadays because of gaming is absolutely crazy.
He's obviously rubbish. Whoever it is, he's obviously rubbish at football anyway. Because if you're going to choose that over football, be honest, you can't be that good.
We've got a couple of football questions, and then we'll move on to our main topic. So, growing up, who did you support?
Okay, so from the West Country, my local team was Bristol Rovers. I always said you should support your local team. Mm-hmm. I lived just outside of Bath. When I was younger, they played at Twerton Park, which is in Bath. So I used to watch them. But my team I supported before that's when I first started to go and watch football live. But when I used to watch the first ever game I saw on the telly, and to this day I'm still a supporter, it was Tottenham. It was the 84 European Cup with Hoddle, Waddle, or Diles. And I remember watching it on the telly. It was the first game I ever saw. Yeah. And it was just a white kit, and that was it. I've always loved white kits, and I was just like, wow, look at them, all in white. It's just they played all in white that night, won the UEFA Cup, and I was hooked from then ever since. And yeah, always been a Spurs supporter.
Good man. So in that case, favourite player growing up?
Well, I guess Chris Waddle and Glenn Hoddle were up there. I mean, they were ones. But I always remember when I didn't really have a kind of an idol in terms of who I looked at to, in terms of football. I just loved to watch the game and all different types of players. But it wasn't until I kind of started playing it properly, seriously, that I then started to look at players to think, well, who do I admire a bit more like I played? Who could I sort of emulate my game on? And he was only a couple of years older than me, and I played against him quite a few times. It's Ryan Giggs. And that was the one person who I looked to think that's how I want to try and play my game. He plays like I want to play. Yeah. So even though, as I say, he's only a few years older than me, he was the one that I kind of looked up to when I was playing to try and replicate.
Definitely. And final one on these ones: the best player you've seen live.
Oh, that's a tough one. It's really tough because I mean, I've been lucky enough to play against Gaza and Cantona and to say Giggs and Scholes, and back in when we played against Bayern Munich, we had Lothar Matthäus, and he was just won the World Cup with Germany captain. So I've been very lucky, really. I don't think I can pick out an individual. I was lucky enough to be in the England squad with Beckham and Scholes and Shearer and Ian Wright, and just an amazing squad. So I'm going to have to defer on that one. I can't pick out an individual.
I think that's an acceptable pass, considering the generation of players that you grew up playing alongside. To be honest,
it really was. There was obviously those iconic players. I mean, Henry as well. I was lucky to play against Invincibles and that team of Henry and Petit and Lundberg and Patrick Vieira and Tony. It was just the list was endless. There was only two places I ever went to, and particularly 90s football was. There's only two places I ever played as a player. I knew we got beat before I was even in the tunnel, and that was Old Trafford and against Arsenal at Highbury. We just in the tunnel, and it was just intimidating. I remember standing in the tunnel at Old Trafford, and Eric Cantona comes and stands alongside you, and he's just got his Gallic flair. He's got his collars up, looking down his Roman nose at you, and you just think, there's no point in this. What do we do? Let's just go in now.
Gaffer, sub.
But then you'd look around, and it was like, right, if we can deal with him, then you, like I said, you had the players alongside him. It was just incredible. So there was those two teams. I mean, Arsenal and Man United in the 90s, you didn't get much change from.
Yeah, definitely. No, I think as Adam said, I think we'll give you a pass on that one, considering the list of players you just kind of rolled off.
I did drop a few names, didn't I, to be fair?
Yeah, you did. That was impressive stuff.
Premier League Dream Team material, what you've just done there.
I tell you what, that's a good idea for a series there, Adam.
Yeah. What, do you fancy trying to get Aguero on?
That would be a dream, wouldn't it? Jesus. He would have a lot to say at the moment, let's face it. Great answers on there. Cheers for those on Darren. Right, let's get into some of the main talking points of what is going on in the game at the moment. Just absolutely incredible. The situation changes day by day. But I don't know if you saw this one, Adam, before we went live. Adrian Marriott, the Watford defender, has come out this evening and confirmed that he has coronavirus. Obviously, we saw the headline from yesterday saying that Premier League players, they've come back, and I think there have been 6 positive tests for COVID-19 in the game at the moment, which is still absolutely mind-blowing what is going on. We've got League One clubs are set to resume talks to continue their season, and despite the fact that League Two's decided they're going to be finishing. Darren, what is your kind of overall opinion on what is happening with the English game at the moment? I'd love to get your kind of thoughts. I know you said a few bits and pieces on Twitter.
Yeah, I've been pretty vocal about it. I felt as if, and people can say as much as they like, but every single football club will have a different agenda as to why they do or don't want the season to continue or go ahead or whatever. The problem with football now is it's not a game anymore. It's business. It's big business, and money will drive everything that's happening here. We all want to see football back. We all want the excitement and the buzz of watching those football matches again. But without the fans and without the kind of season in full swing, it's just a business showcase. That's what it feels like to me. I watched a bit of the Bundesliga, and as much as it's been okay, it's just not football. Without the fans there and watching and having the atmosphere and all that, it just feels like it's something that's been almost computer generated. It just feels a little bit false. And it is money led. Nobody can say to me now that Liverpool aren't going to win the title. So if it's about finishing the season, look, who cares? Liverpool are the champions. I think everybody would admit it. And it's really difficult to work out how you then go about it afterwards, because there's such a massive difference between the top of the Premier League team and a team who's at the bottom. Norwich are down there, and it's like, well, they have very different setups in terms of business for their club. Liverpool can survive no matter what. Norwich are a self-funding football club. So in terms of not getting the gate receipts, that makes a massive difference to them. Whereas it doesn't quite so much when you've got billionaire owners. So it's a very difficult one to. It just all feels a bit wrong. My personal view was, just finish the season now. Give Liverpool the title. Nobody gets relegated, and I thought the fairest thing to do would be to bring the top two from the Championship up and play a 22 or even top three in the Championship. They're 23 league or teams league, and extend the league a little bit next season, and then 5 go down.
Right.
But then there are no right or wrong answers. There's going to be collateral damage no matter what with any of this. You're never going to keep everybody happy. And I just felt everything, the kind of overriding human side of it was getting a bit overlooked. And I was, again, very vocal about the PFA. And, there are players that have come out and said they don't want to play. Majority of them probably do want to play. If I was a player, I would want to play. But I'd want assurances that actually I'm going to be okay. My family's going to be okay as well. I'm still not sure they can 100% guarantee that. And somebody put a quote on Twitter, I think it was a while ago now. And it kind of struck a chord with me. It sounds quite dramatic. But it was. I think the hashtag they used was "footballers, not gladiators," and that kind of felt a bit right. And as much as dramatic as it seems, these are human beings. They're not here for everybody's entertainment. And in terms of putting their lives on the line, like a gladiator would be back in the day, you've got to look at the bigger picture here. But I do believe that football's going to come back at some point, and the coronavirus is still going to be here. It's going to come down. I think the fairest way to do it is individual by individual. If a player says, I'm not prepared to play, I think the club have to not punish them. They have to hold their hands up and say, okay, we understand your reasons why, if they give the valid reasons. I know Troy Deeney's come out and said he's got a 5-month-old baby that's had a few kind of breathing problems. And it's like, well, I can totally understand where he's coming from. Yeah. Whether it's right or wrong, you have to take his opinion into it because, God forbid if something happened. And that is just the fear of it. The odds are nothing will happen. But again, I just feel this has all been driven by money. But money driven for different reasons. Some teams want so they can get the sponsorship money to be able to pay bills, to do this. Some teams have already had their money paid by sponsors and sponsors will want some of their money back. Some will be waiting to pay and they haven't quite paid it all yet. Norwich need the gate receipts. And then you go down the ladder of football as well, and it's even more of a mess. So I honestly don't know the best way of doing it, but they need to just make a decision. And it should have been done by now already. They should have said, we are definitely going to come back and play as soon as it's safe. Or the season's void. It's just been a bit of, nobody really knows what's going on. I think, as you say, I think they've shown, or some people and some football clubs and football has shown its kind of dark side, if you like, a little bit, it being financially led. And I think it's left a little bit of a bad taste in a lot of football fans' mouths. But as I say, once it gets back on again and fans are allowed back in the stadiums, everything will be forgotten about. Even if there will be, I don't believe a football club should be treated any different to any other business. There's businesses that are going up. We've seen that Rolls-Royce today having to lay off 9,000 people. That's a massive company that's got more history than probably a lot of football clubs. So clubs perhaps will go under and staff will be made redundant and people will lose their jobs. But it's no different from anybody else losing a job in any other walk of life. It will happen. You can't protect everybody. And I don't think football should be forced back to a position where they're trying to safeguard that for financial reasons, because I don't believe it is for the reasons of the staff and trying to keep their jobs. I believe it's financial gain for the owners and a lot of people involved with the football clubs.
Yeah, I suppose some people would say, like being completely cynical, Darren, because you are a former Norwich player, you'd have an interest in ensuring that Norwich maybe stayed in the Premier League for another season because they haven't had a fair crack at completing the season and they're not relegated yet. No. I personally don't see that as a fair argument, though. But can you see why some people are peddling that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Stuart Webber's come out and said that he thinks the season should be completed and they should be given the right to, if they do that, then the Championship. And I agree with him. The Championship should have to play out their season too to see who comes up. Or you have to play it out to see who goes down. Then they should do the Championship as well. So, but I understand why Stuart Webber's he's the CEO of a Premier League football club. He's going to back for his side. He's going to say the things he wants to make sure his club stay in the Premier League.
That's right.
I guarantee you, and I've been very open about this, I guarantee you Norwich were preparing for relegation the minute they started this season anyway. Because they felt as if they got there too early last year. If they survived, brilliant. If they didn't, they were preparing for it anyway. The reason it's financially put Norwich in a bad place is because of the gate receipts they're not going to receive. So it's left a massive hole in terms of that finance and sponsors. You know, I don't buy it. It's just because they want to stay in the Premier League. Because if they wanted to stay in the Premier League, they perhaps would have done a bit more business in the summer or in January to sign some more players. So, you know, they do deserve to right to try and play the season out. And we've seen some massive miracles happen before. They're only 6 points off safety. And,
there's not a big gap, is there, at all?
No, and it can be done. But the problem you've got is everybody's got an ulterior motive in this. There's no collective thinking for everyone to think that's the right answer, because there is no right answer to it. But I can totally see it. And you know, of course, I want Norwich to be in the Premier League. I want it, and it's not just because I'm not a Norwich supporter. Of course, I support them because I used to play for them. But I'm from I support Spurs and Bristol Rovers and my other team. But I want them to do well. Of course, I do. And actually, working wise, you know, I want to see Premier League football at Norwich City. You know, I don't want to go and watch Championship teams there anymore. I want to be seeing the likes of Liverpool, Man Cities, and the Arsenals and the Chelseas and Tottenham's all come into Carrow Road to see those players as well. It's not just about watching Norwich. For me, it was about, this season in particular, was about watching those teams come into Norwich City. As much as you want to see Norwich do well, I wanted to see Aguero. I wanted to see Salah. I wanted to see Mane. You know, I wanted to see all these fantastic players at Carrow Road. And that's the place to be. If you can get there by hook or by crook or by default, I wouldn't expect anyone to think any different. But if the powers that be decide that Norwich should go down because of the position they're in now and at the bottom of the league, then so be it. I don't have an issue with it. But as long as everybody gets treated in the same manner, I think that's the way it is, and they'll have to just suck it up and take it and try and build and rebuild for next season.
Yeah, because one of the criticisms that was labelled at non-league football in particular is the fact that across the board a decision was made very early on of how to finish the season. Now, whether or not you agree with the decision to completely expunge all results and none of it matters, we've had that kind of debate on here before, but that decision to be made, and yet the Football League is still so undecided with how they're going to sort promotions and relegations out. It's so confusing because every league, it's not just every club, but every league has got its own agenda as well. It's so confusing.
That's the massive differences in financial goals, and it was easy to make that decision from non-league down because it was like, well, if some non-league clubs go under, who cares really? And that's you know, as much as the people who go and watch it every week, you know, that will happen. You know, but even at that level, you know, Stowmarket were lobbing loads of money around this year to try and get themselves promoted, and they got themselves in a position to do that, and now it's been kind of thrown away. So I can understand their argument, you know, so I get it. But what's the alternative? You know, if you play the season out, when do you start again? Then contracts are up. It's a massive. I think it was the right thing to do. I do at all levels below professional football, was to stop it there and then and say, look, you know, hopefully we'll all be okay. There's not huge amounts of money involved. But even in those kind of levels, you know, there's players who are still expecting to be paid their mony. And I'm just thinking, look, come on, do me a favour. This is non-league. You know, I know it's difficult, but if you want your club to survive, you know, if you're relying on that money to actually pay your bills, then it's obviously a different kind of feeling. But if you're willing to take that money and see the football club you want to play football at go under, then it's a no-brainer for me. But you know, again, it's everybody's different circumstances. Some people will be playing for the money to be able to add to their daily income to be able to pay their bills, and for some people it'll be extra money on top that they, you know, be able to go on holiday with or something like that. So again, everybody's different, but I think it was the right decision to stop non-league for what it was and just restart the new season when they can.
Do you think that should have been? Sorry, Adam, but do you think that should have been done at higher levels as well, just to follow the same kind of rules, or do you think you can't? There's no way that can be done, just to cancel the season and then we'll go whenever we can at, say, Premier League, Championship and below.
No, my personal view was sack it all off, void everything. Award Liverpool the title because I think they deserve that. I don't, you know, no one's going to catch them. I think, you know, and I would still, you know, is it Leeds the top of Championship?
Yes.
You know, I'd award the Championship title. And then you decide, actually, what's going to happen? Are we going to have any promotion or relegation? But I don't think anybody financially deserves to be relegated without actually playing the season out on a point per game system. So in that case, like I said, I think for me, the best way to do it would have been to put potentially the top 2 in automatic promotion places into the Premier League and play with the 22-team league next season, and then 4 go down. And the same with the League One or League 2 into the Championship, and likewise League One, and then just have a bigger relegation at the end of it. I just think it would have focused everybody's minds quite early to build for that scenario. Whereas now, you know, we're in 20th of May, and we still don't know what we're doing. We don't even know if next season is going to start on time or not for anyone. I think if they'd have stacked it off and said, look, we're going to start the next season as per normal, hopefully in the time we can. If that's behind closed doors, it's behind closed doors. But the decision's just dragging on too long. And we don't know where we are, because if the Premier League decide to come back and all of a sudden then there's a load of players that then get coronavirus and they have to call it off again, what happens then? You know, does non-league and everybody else, does League 2 start next season in August when it's supposed to, when everybody else is potentially still finishing the season from before? And if they do, what happens to the teams that then come down from League 1 into League 2? Do they join in the season as it's got? I mean, it's just completely disjointed, and that's the difficult thing. I think it should have just been a cumulative agreeing from the top. Look, this is going to upset a lot of people, but this is what we're doing, and we're doing it now, so everybody can build and start again from then.
Yeah, sorry, go on, Adam. You were gonna say something on that.
Yeah, I was just said something. Just a couple of points. Obviously, with non-league, I think the thing is more and more money is filtered into non-league clubs at different levels, and I think certain players at different levels have been able to adapt their lifestyle so that they're playing semi-pro to an extent where they may not need the job that they maybe once had or the working hours. To, you know, they're now supporting a more lavish lifestyle because of the wages that they're reliant on. And may that only be for 1 year or 2 years. If you suddenly take those away from people start kicking, screaming and shouting. And the problem is, it feels very wrong when at the expense of a few £100 a week for one person, and the entire community could go down. Which, do you know what I mean? Like, these people may lose some money on top of what their standard income would be, but an entire footballing community, which could be many, many teams, many, many players, and everyone else that comes to watch week in, week out, that all goes if it goes wrong.
Yeah, and I think that's the point I was making about how, you know, if players at those levels decide to take that money, then it's you know, below the pro game, I don't think anybody's contract should be honoured from when the season was stopped. I think it should have just been said, look, the clubs need to survive. This is the way you can help your club survive. Yeah. And I know it's difficult, you saying the lavish lifestyle, but then we all want better. But, you know, sometimes you have to take a little bit of a hit and everything. Yeah. You know, I've gone from being a Premier League footballer, earning tens of thousands a week, to earning that in a year. You know, so I've had to take that hit. And I know it's a little bit different, but, you know, you've got to live within your means. And if you have to adjust things to do that before you then come back again, then so be it. We're all in the same position. Yeah. We all could do with a little bit more money, but I think if you're relying on a couple of £100 a month, or a few £100 a month, or in potentially some of the leagues, you know, non-leagues, a lot more than that. But I don't ever think you should be relying on a non-professional business to pay your way in life. There's always going to be upset, I think, in that case.
It feels like a very uncomfortable concept to me that people are doing that.
Yeah, and I think they have. You know, there's a lot of money in non-league now, and there's probably not much difference between League 2 and obviously the leagues below, a couple of leagues below. I don't think there's probably a huge great deal, and there's some non-league clubs that are throwing loads of money at it. But as I say, unless it's a professional game, unless you're involved in a professional game, I don't see how you can have that as trying to subsidise your main income. I mean, I just think that's naive to do that, massively naive, because you could potentially. You know, I was lucky. I played in the Premier League and sort of earned a fair bit of money. You know, you could get injured like I did at 28. Then all of a sudden your career's over. Now, if that's non-league and you're relying on that money, you know, what else have you got to fall back on? You shouldn't be relying on your football in non-league to be paying your way in life. You know, you need to be having a better education, getting yourself a better job, or, you know, looking for better prospects outside of the football world. You know, the football should be treated as a bonus on top, and use that as an added bonus to get you those lavish things you can sort of spoil yourself and your children on. And it shouldn't be your income.
I think bigger picture is that
if you're not going to be prepared to take that sacrifice and that hit on your wages at a lower league level, there might not be a club in a few months' time to be able to pay you later on down the line anyway. And I think a lot of clubs will be hit financially. We've already seen a couple of clubs going out of business, having to drop down leagues, etc., because of the current situation. I think non-league as a whole is going to have a massive hit, and there are going to be some players who are going to have a big wake-up call.
Do you know what, though, James? There would be a joke is that people would like say, "Oh, you know, if you're not going to pay me, I'll leave." Whatever. Don't think for 1 minute that same salary is just going to be available next season at clubs, because no way.
No, but that, I think you're right, James. And I think what it will show now is football will hopefully, particularly in non-league, where it seems to me as if it's got a little bit stupid as well. It needs to press the reset button in terms of finances. And I think if this can be done following this, you know, look, if you're a good enough player, you will still earn that money. You will still earn good money. The problem is there's been some bang average players getting paid good money at whatever level that is. And that's been the biggest problem, because if you're good enough, you know, and I made a statement about, I said about these players, you know, in the top levels, the Premier League, saying, well, look, I don't want to play because I'm concerned about my family. People say, well, what about if the club discipline them and say they're not going to pay their wages because it's breach of contract? Well, if they're good enough players, they've got belief and they're confident in their players, they want to do the right thing by their family. Financially, they're going to be all right. Don't you worry about that. They'll be fine. And actually, if they're good enough players, who's going to release? So you're telling me if Mo Salah just says, well, do you know what? I'm so concerned about my family. I'm not playing for Liverpool anymore until this has all gone away. Do you think Liverpool are going to go, oh, that's it, breach contract, you're sacked? Because then someone else will take him. So they're not going to do it anyway. So if you're a good enough player, you can call the shots. You know, it doesn't matter. No one is going to say, all right, you breached contract. You know, we're not going to let you play. You know, you're not paying you, and you breach your contract, which means we can sack you. They ain't going to do it because they'll go somewhere else. You know, the massive commodity.
Like, flip that round. Does this become a convenient time to get rid of those players that maybe aren't quite good enough?
Yeah, absolutely does. But this is what I said about, you know, does Rolls-Royce need to get rid of 9,000 people? It's a way of, I think, streamlining a lot of businesses, because it has become very difficult to probably streamline your businesses because there is so much protection for workers, which is rightly so. But people will use it, and football clubs will use it to streamline and get rid of people. It's any excuse, you know. It's a business. If you can cut back on things you don't need, businesses will do it. Whereas you couldn't have done it before, but now you've got. It's a terrible thing to say, but you've got one hell of an excuse to be able to streamline your business now.
Prime opportunity, isn't it, for clubs?
Yeah, 100%. But would love to get your guys' thoughts on how to end the season. Let us know by getting in the comment section of this, or join us on the conversation on Twitter. What is the right way to end the season? You've heard kind of Darren's thoughts on it. We've talked about it numerous times on the show. Let us know. As I said down in the comments, what is the right way to end it? I'd be really interested to hear what you guys have to say. Darren, let's move on and talk about your journey in football. I'd love to kind of get into the nitty-gritties of how it all kind of started and the process of being in the pro game, etc. Before you joined Norwich, you briefly mentioned your time between football and rugby when you were a kid. Just talk about what kind of level you were playing at football-wise, and how the kind of move to Norwich prior to it. How did that kind of come about, considering whereabouts in the country you were born and raised? Okay, so I mean, back in the day, sounds terrible. I look, I'm really old, but you know, there wasn't the setups that academies have now. So they didn't have academies with kids of 6, 7, 8 years old. You know, I played for my local team. I enjoyed playing my mates. I expressed myself. I could do as I wanted. I could be the best I wanted to be without the pressures of being in a professional football club. And that for me was the best system. Kids for me now are taken too early. Get bored of the game, get fed up with it, get their natural ability sometimes drilled out of them because they you know, get taken to a pro club and they try and mould you the way they want you to be. So I did a lot of that, and I played for my local team, and I was stayed between rugby and football, and then went down the football route, and I was at Swindon Town Centre of Excellence, was my first pro club. But that was a one night a week thing when I was about 12, 13. And then I went to probably a little bit younger than that, 11 or 12, and then I got scouted by Southampton, who had some sort of Halo
sort of camps around the different parts of the country, and it was kind of under the wing of Southampton, but it wasn't Southampton Football Club. It's kind of like these academies they had around that they sort of scouted different boys and got them playing for them. And then we used to just go around the country playing with that, and then ended up playing Norwich one day. And I got asked to come up for a trial at Norwich. And because I was, not officially signed with Southampton, because you didn't really do anything like that until you were a schoolboy, which would have been 14. Because I was younger, I could have gone where I wanted to go. And I went to Norwich and immediately kind of did well there. Got asked to come up and asked to sign schoolboy forms. And for me, it was the other side of the country. It was miles away. It was a 4-hour, 5-hour journey for my mum and dad to get me there, and I had to leave home at 16 to come and live up here. But it was a choice I made because Norwich for me was a football club, particularly that had a great reputation for bringing you through. And I thought that was the best opportunity for me to get that opportunity as a pro footballer. And even looking back to the team, when I've done it a few times now, the squad when we played against Bayern Munich, 93, 94, and looking at our team photo at the start of the season that year, a 26-man squad, essentially, it was about 26 players. 13 of those were Norwich youth team products. Yes. So, it showed exactly what they could do. And for me, that was the biggest thing about it was doing that. And then once I was in the youth team, I had great pals with Jamie Curran, and we grew up together, stayed in digs together. Jamie was the most natural goal scorer I've ever met in my life. He was, he would have played at much, and he knows. We laugh about it a lot because you say we were in digs together, whereas my off the pitch antics were probably less than Jamie's. And Jamie went one way and I went the other. And Jamie openly admits that now. He partied too hard when he was too young, thought he'd cracked it, and it kind of all fell apart for him for a few years. Not saying that, he's playing at 44, so he's not done too bad.
Yeah, we did a podcast with Jamie, and he said that he's far more professional now than he ever was when he was younger. Yeah, and if he would have knuckled down, things could have been different.
But he could, as I say, he was the best natural finisher I've ever seen in my life and ever played with. He had the lot. But he partied too hard, and it caught up with him. I remember him coming back from pre-season once, and he'd been to Mexico, and he came back with a beer belly. He come back. I mean, he's a little lad, and he came back with a massive belly light on it, and that's like, Jamie, what you do? And he was behind or with the goalkeepers in the running sessions, and it's like, wow. And then that was it. Martin O'Neill was like, "You ain't staying. Get out. You can't behave like that." And I think he shot himself in the foot, and it took him probably quite a few years to go and get his head screwed on a little bit. And, it's a shame because he was, when we were breaking into the first team, I was one of the ones out of the youth team that got in there first, and Jamie wasn't too far behind. Yeah. And he was scoring against Arsenal and Chelsea, and, he could have had a very different career, I guess, in the early years, if his attitude or his application would have been a bit different. But, I'm sure, he knows that. He knows that more than anybody does. But, playing with him was easy, really. He made sometimes my bad crosses look like good ones. He was that type of finisher. So, but we also had the benefit of having reserve team football as well. And for me, that was a massive bonus compared to, I've got no time for under 23 football in pro game. It's a level up from the youth team where, kids go in and they're still playing with their peers, and it's not really any benefit to them. You've got to learn to play senior football, which will bring me actually quite nicely onto the non-league stuff in a little while. But, for me, it was about my first reserve game for Norwich. I must have only been about 16. We played Chelsea, and I was up against Steve Clark, who played right back, and he smashed me in the first 5 minutes. And it was like, I knew from then, that instant, what I had to do. That senior football was different. The changing room was different. When you're a kid and you're in a youth team, or even in the under 23s now, the coach tells you what you want to do. You go out, you sit there, you listen, and you carry on. You try and do what they want to do. You go into a senior environment. The senior players have got a voice in the change room. It's loud. People shouting. They're arguing. It's a very different place to be. And I think that's why the non-league route now is and Norwich are very, very good at it. To their loan markets, making sure they're getting lads out on loan that are young to see if they can manage that. They're getting them out in the low leagues. They're getting them out in non-league senior football. Not to see if they're technically good enough. We know they are. It's to see if they can handle senior football. And some crash and burn who they think wouldn't, and some who they thought might actually excel and come on again. So for me now, non-league football is so important to the professional game in terms of a learning curve, because under 23 football, if you're playing in the under 23s and you're 22, you ain't making it. You know, as soon as you're getting too old, they're getting rid of you. You know, if you're going out, when I was playing, if you went out on loan, you weren't wanted as a youngster. You know, they wanted to get rid of you. But now, if you're going out on loan as a youngster, they want you. They think you're decent. They want to see what you can do. So it's become a lot of a different path, and that mindset has had to change, I think, for players to say, look, actually, going out on loan is a good thing. Right, you know, they just put me out for that development, and that comes down to the staff to explain the reasons why they go in. And I said Norwich are very good at it. They're very good at picking the right type of club for the right type of player. They won't just send someone out on loan for the sake of it. It'll have to be right for them. It'll have to be the right type of team, type of experience they want them to have. Some players, you know, need to go into an environment where they're going to have to fight and bite, and you know, and some players need to go in an environment where it's going to be a lovely kind of fluffy environment for them, but in a senior level. So, you know, the Norwich are very, very good. Neil Adams in particular is very good on the loan market of making sure those players are going to the right places. And you can see in the last few years they've benefited from that massively. With players, you know, Maddison and obviously Todd Cantwell has been out on loan, Adam Ida's been out on loan, all these players, and, you know, Ben Godfrey, they've all been out on loan. So it knows that they've learned their trade and they're coming back in and have got that experience to be able to step into senior football without being such a massive shock.
Yeah, 100%.
Do you think that, like, as pro clubs, I can completely see, like, old football was, if you were loaned out, you weren't needed at the club anymore, really, and things were shifted on. But the new age football, it seems to be that's where they test your physicality and your mental strength as a human, and look at how you can apply that. It seems like they pick out the players that are technically gifted, and you know, maybe they can see they've already got the social ability to be able to get through that first phase, and the loan just puts that icing on the cake. Would you agree with that?
100%. Yeah, and this is what comes back to that youth system where kids are taken in at the year, you know, ages 6 and 7, and they're given everything they need. They play on perfect pitches. They don't play with their local teams anymore, so they're not. You know, I learned that fight and that guile by playing with my mates at a weekend when I was younger. I learned that, and I learned that by playing up 2 or 3 ages when I was younger. You know, even 4 ages sometimes, because I could. And I was getting challenged by physical, you know, older boys that I had to play up against. They don't get that now. So it's all nice for them. So sometimes it's about sending them out on loan and playing on a non-league pitch or in change rooms that aren't so nice that they're completely used to, because it's normally groomed for them and, you know, everything's done for them. It's about seeing if they can handle it. And it's not about trying to give them a bad experience. It's about showing them, you know, it's not about showing them, look how lucky you are to be in an environment. It's not about that at all. It's about showing them actually, have you got a mentality that can deal with adversity, whatever that adversity is? Have you got that mentality to be able to deal with it? And I think that's a lot of what they're doing now, is getting lads out on loan to see if they can do that. And so it's not about punishing them or saying to them, look, you're going to play on this. If you don't buck your ideas up, you're going to play on this the rest of your career. You know, you don't know how lucky you are. It's not about that. It's about that, just giving them that, switching their brain to say, you know, when things are tough, can you pull through it? Because it doesn't, you know, it's a very different kind of toughness in the Premier League, mental toughness, but it will still flick the same switches in your head that you'll need, that you'll learn at that level.
I mean, that kind of, everything you just said there is spot on with what we've had in recent podcasts, Adam. We had Alex Bradley on, who is a youngster at the moment in the game. He's playing for Lincoln City, and he said that he had to go out and get experience in non-league to really get an understanding of what football meant. He had gone through the West Brom Academy, and his first experience of non-league, he even admitted that the first few games he just felt lost, because he had to then suddenly grow up and understand what the game was.
When he came in, he entered this journey at 7 years old.
Yeah, exactly what you're saying, Darren. And you know, he had the realization that the people that he was playing with, although he was there to impress his parent club, everyone else was playing because they wanted that bonus. They wanted that win bonus. They wanted to get on the score sheet. You know, the 3 points mattered in a competitive environment. And the most recent podcast we've had, Adam, Simon Johnson, ex Leeds player in the sort of like late 90s and early 20s. He spoke about it when he was offered out on loan. It was almost like an insult to him that the club didn't want him, and everything you just said there is exactly it mirrors what we've had in the different podcasts recently. That, as I said, a loan felt like a slap in the face to him. Well,
Simon said that he told the club where to go when he got offered it.
Well, the thing is as well, right? Unless you're playing for potentially a top 6 Premier League side, you're gonna lose more games than you win. So you've got to learn how to lose. You've got to learn how to not get what you want. And I guarantee you, I've been speaking to Neil Adams and Steve Weaver and the chaps who are actually working with us at Leicester, and we'll be putting players our way who we feel was right for us and right for them as well to come into us. And I speak to them about it, and that's exactly what they want. You know, they've got to learn. They've got to learn that it's not just there for them. They have to work hard for it, and it's a massive learning curve for them. And it's not a slap in the face. It's about you learning actually what you need to learn to step up into that senior environment. Because if you go straight into a Premier League environment as a young kid, you'll get eaten alive. You know, when you go into a senior environment in non-league or in lower leagues, at least you're getting experience of it. Because it's loud, it's brash, it's harsh. But that's what football's like at the top level. And that's why they're so good in the Premier League. Those players are like that all the time. So you've got to learn to be able to deal with it. And I think, you know, players are too easy to give up. Players are too easy to take it the wrong way. And you see the difference now. I mean, I see so many kids that have got so much ability that come out of football at 15, 16, get released by their clubs and don't even play local football anymore because they're embarrassed or they feel ashamed. They feel that's not good enough for me. You've got to get back on the horse and just get going because, you know, you'll see those lads that do. And, you know, we've seen over recent years with Jamie Vardy and Troy Deeney, you know, all these players that have come through non-league routes that have got back into the game later on in their careers because they found that hunger, they found that work rate, they found that bite. It's never over. It's only over when you decide it is. Now, if you decide to sulk and say this isn't good enough for me or I'm not, you know, I'm too good for this, you're never ever going to make it any level.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Sorry, I think Simon even admitted that himself at the end of the podcast, didn't he, Adam, where he said, you know, looking back, I wish I had embraced those opportunities because my game could have been completely different if I took, you know, he went out on those loans, but I think even he said that he didn't give it 100% because he didn't feel like he should have been there. Whereas when you look back, I think, as I said, he's admitted that, you know, he wished he took that opportunity.
Well, from then as well, James, that's poor management, isn't it? You know, the people who are putting him out on loan should be sitting him down and telling him why he's going out on loan. Yeah. Not just him out to make his own assumptions that he's not, you know, he's getting bombed out or whatever. Yeah. Even if he's getting bombed out, give the lad a chance and actually tell him what he can learn by going out on loan. Don't just let him go there and do it himself because the easiest thing to do is go, do you know what, I'm going to bother. Yeah. You know, it's easy to do that. So, you know, it's about treating these kids with kid gloves a little bit to actually try and get the best out of them. If you are a club that wants to get rid of them, give them the best experience they can do by going out on loan and tell them why you're doing it. And actually there is a route back if you do this, if this happens. Yeah. It's too easy just to, and that's where I think Norwich have got it right, you know, in terms of their loan system. Neil Adams goes to watch all the loanees. He goes to watch them all the time. He goes to visit where they're staying. He goes to the houses they're in, the environment they're in, the training grounds. He does all that before they even sign for them. Yeah. Whereas some clubs send them out and let them get on with it and wouldn't even know what they're doing. You know, wouldn't even know let them know how they're playing. Wouldn't even report back.
So how different do you think the start of your career would have been, Darren, if that sort of infrastructure was available when you began playing at pro level, like as you came through?
It's difficult to say because I was lucky enough. I got into the Norwich team at just turned 18 and kind of didn't look back. So I was lucky I didn't need to do that, but. You know, that would have been an ideal one for Jamie Curtin, without a doubt. If you know, they got rid of him, they sent him out and he went somewhere else. But actually, if he'd have been treated a little bit differently as to tell him why he was going out, or, you know, there is a route back, or even if they kept him and sent him out on loan for a period to say, look, get your arse in gear. This is what we want from you. Yeah. This is a way you can learn to get that experience. But it wasn't like that then. There wasn't infrastructure like that. It was kind of, you either do it in the first team or you're out. You're going to go somewhere else. So it was a lot harsher, I think, then. But whereas now, I think there's a lot more, and rightly so, because there's, you know, there's hidden gems, I think, in players. So players now are given every opportunity to make it. If you don't make it in today's game, you're just not good enough. And that's the be all and end all of it. You know, nobody gets missed anymore.
Yeah, definitely. Going back to your kind of early point, before we get into the actual debut side of things at Norwich, when you are a youngster making that move across the country, do you kind of have any reservations at the time? Are you excited about the opportunity? What's kind of going through your head when you are signed up by Norwich at such a young age?
Again, my mum used to bring this up quite a lot, and maybe I blanked out my memories, but when I first came up and I was literally coming up here to stay, they drove me obviously up to my digs, and we sat in, I think it's one of the pubs, just to have something to eat before they left to go back to the West Country, and apparently I was crying and said, I want to go home, I don't want to be here. But they kind of forced me to stay. They said, look, this is your opportunity. You know, in terms of, if you say they're good parents or bad parents, they forced me to stay. It must have broke their heart to do that, to see me the way I was.
Yeah.
But for them, it was about, this is your opportunity, and they wanted to make sure like I didn't regret it, I guess, later on.
Yeah.
But as soon as I got playing and I felt comfortable playing, and it's the same for any player. If you're playing well, you feel comfortable, you feel at home. And the team we had in the youth team then, I mean, you know, there's a lot of talk always about kind of the 92 of class 92 from Man United. And I know we were on a slightly different level, but the youth team we had at the time, I think there was 7, 8, 9 of those players that went on to play pro, which was an incredible turnout for one youth team. So, you know, we had a good side. We were very competitive every single year. We had good individuals. But the one thing we did have as well is that pathway into reserves. If you're doing well enough, you'd be straight in there. And it wasn't long before I was going in and out the reserves, and then pushing for a first team spot.
And when you are going through that kind of stage into the first team, is there any one person in particular, maybe player or coach, that's kind of guiding you along the way? Is there anyone that kind of took you under their wing, so to speak?
I think, well, Keith Webb was the youth team manager at the time, who it's quite funny. I speak to Keith now still and see him about a bit, and he's a very different coach to who he was then. He works with the FA now, so he's kind of very, very FA oriented, doing things the right way, coaching, you know, learning the game. Doing that. Back in the day, he was just crack the whip, and he honestly frightened into it. But you know, but you could argue, you know, what's the right way, what's the wrong way? Because when he was the way he was, he produced that many players that was going on and playing in the first team.
Yeah.
Whereas actually the style he changed to, I'm not so sure he had so much success after that. So, you know, what is the right way or wrong way? And I you know, I'm a big believer in individuals, and, you know, you treat everyone different and use them, you know, get the best out of them in different ways. But then, you know, we also had Mike Walker, who was the reserve team manager when I first signed for Norwich as a kid. And first got into the reserves. He then took over in the first team. So that pathway was there. He knew already what I could do. And he was a manager that did give opportunities to youngsters. He wasn't afraid. And I remember the time I made my debut, I didn't actually know I was going to make it, of course. But Dave Phillips was kind of the left winger or left midfielder for Norwich at the time. Welsh international, very good player.
Great player.
And he was in contract wrangles with the club at the time. I think his contract was due to be up. He wanted to sign a new contract, but wanted more money. The club didn't want to pay it. And they gave me an opportunity. And I think the be all and end of what it was, they said to him, all right, you can go, because we've got this youngster coming through now. Look, we hope it's going to do just as bad. So, you know, again, it's just, in football, it's a time and a place and a little bit of luck, and the right opportunity comes along. And, you know, that was my time. You know, did I expect it? No, I didn't, particularly at that time in the club's history. I never thought I was going to get anywhere near the first team.
Yeah, because you came in the major debut against QPR. If I've got my pre-podcast information.
Well, you've got my league debut correct, but my actual first team debut was against Vita Sarnum in the European Cup, which was Norwich's first ever European Cup game. So for an 18-year-old, you know, as a lad on the bench for that game, and Mike Walker as a manager, I think we're 2-0 up, or might even be 3-1 up or 3-0 up something in the first game, and he chucked me on with 20 minutes to go as a kid who's just got in the first team squad. You know, so it showed the confidence he had in me to be able to do that. And then, you know, we ended up winning that game, and obviously had the success we had in Europe. And my league debut was against QPR that weekend after that midweek game, and I scored on the Premier League debut. So, yeah, everything just kind of fell into place for me at such an early age. It was all a bit of a whirlwind.
So with
between those, sorry, James, like just between those two games, Darren, just something to pick up on. Like, did you feel the gravity of the moment starting in European competition at all, or was it much later?
Yeah, never felt the pressure of it. And you ask any young lad, you don't have time to think. You're full of youthful exuberance. You have no expectations because you don't know what it's all about.
Yeah,
I'd never been in that environment before. I'd never done it before. So, I used to get more nervous in the later games than I did in my early career because, as much as I stood against, Lothar Matthäus in the tunnel against Bayern Munich, it's more excitement than nerves. It was just, I can't believe I'm doing this. You just want to get out there and play football. You kind of, it's almost like they talk about youngsters about not, their frontal lobes not developed enough to have those kind of, all those kind of doubts. And I didn't have any doubts at that time. I was a youngster that was just playing football and kind of couldn't believe what was happening. So I had no fear whatsoever. And you find out a lot of youngsters, you ask them when they first get in the team, because you don't have any expectations, you don't feel the pressure of it.
Yeah.
So I think when you look at the pyramid of football and you think like, dream to play in the Premier League one day, to dream to play in Europe one day is different levels.
It was ticking. It was ticking all those boxes to It's what's the when I first got in Norwich's first team, Norwich were a top 3 Premier League team. We finished in the Premier League the year before, so we were a good side. And I managed to break into that at 18 and score my Premier League debut and then playing against Bayern Munich and Inter Milan and then, a few years later, getting into the full England squad, under 21s and then the full England squad. So it was all, I achieved everything in my career like I wanted to, in terms of reaching the heights I wanted to. There just wasn't enough of it. My career was cut short obviously because of injury, but, that for me was the one thing I not regret, but, in terms of achievements, I reached kind of every goal I wanted to reach as a kid. And that was probably as a surprise to me as much as it was everybody else.
Was it hard because you did those things so early, though?
But I think it was. Well, I don't really know because I thought that's what it'd be like every week. I thought we were playing in Europe every year. Obviously I wasn't savvy enough to know that actually, because we did so well in Europe, look, Chris Sutton's going to leave and Will Fox is going to leave and all these great players we've got are going to leave because of their success. And then naturally things don't end up being quite the same. And football, particularly Norwich in particular, has always been a bit of a kind of roller coaster ride where it's been up and down the leagues. And I've sort of was in part of that. But, I always went out onto the pitch to do the best I could in every single game, whatever position I played in. And, lucky to play under Martin O'Neill at Norwich as well, that then took me to Leicester back into the Premier League again. And that was, my dad's team. My dad was a Leicester supporter, born and bred in Leicester. So for me, it was a strange time, really strange time. And I know we're kind of moving on a little bit, but when I left Norwich, I didn't want to leave. I remember Bruce Riot calling me into the office and saying, we've accepted an offer from Leicester. You're free to go and speak to them. I said, well, I ain't going anywhere. I've just signed a really good contract at Norwich. I was on good money. I was happy. I guess I was going to be happy being another Matt Le Tissier, kind of staying at one club. And I loved being at Norwich, and I didn't want to leave. And I said, I'm not leaving. And he basically told me, look, if you don't leave, the club's going to go in administration because they were financial difficulties at the time. So I left and went to Leicester. And Leicester at the time was the closest other Premier League team to Norwich. So and obviously it was my dad's team, so it was a nice fit.
So just going back to that debut then, a bit, against Vitesse. What's going through your head? What are the emotions like at that time? In the build up to it as well, just like when you are on the bench, etc. You just kind of in a daze that you're even there. What's kind of happening at that time?
Yeah, it's really strange. It's really difficult to kind of recall back that far and think about your actual thoughts at the time. It's weird when I think about football now and I think about my career and I think about certain goals. I don't think about them as me scoring them. I think about them as I see them on the telly. So it's a very kind of different feeling. So I can't actually remember. I remember seeing the highlights of me running down the wing, but I can't actually remember doing it during the game. So it's weird. But I remember being massively excited and thinking it's all a little bit unbelievable and being this kind of coy kid in the corner in the changing rooms. And, that was my experience to say, as much as I got senior football in reserves, that's my first experience as a first team. These other lads were nervous and they were experienced pros, going into Europe. So for me, it did all happen very quickly, and the emotions were, I didn't think I was going to get on. No, I definitely didn't. No. But then with 20 minutes to go for Mike Walker to turn around to me and say, get warmed up, I was like, why am I bothering to get warmed up? I ain't going to go on, surely. You put me on.
Yeah.
And then warmed up, and then he called me back and stuck me on for about the last 15, 20 minutes, whatever it was. So, yeah, it's really difficult to recall memories of those type of feelings, because I think if you ask a lot of footballers now, when you recall stuff, I can't remember the actual incidences happening. I just remember being shown them again, really, I think, more than anything else.
Now, when I spoke to Dean Bowditch a couple of weeks ago in his debut for Ipswich, and he was just saying the manager was talking to me and he was giving me instructions and telling me what to do, but none of it was sinking in. I wasn't thinking about it. I was just thinking, right, I want to get on the pitch. Just get me on the pitch. No, none of it was kind of registering.
No, that's right. And I'm sure he would have given me instructions about I needed to be on corners or what I needed to, you don't. It's all just, and when you first get on that pitch as a pro as well, honestly, it's just a lung burst. You just don't. You literally run everywhere as much as you can, as fast as you can, until you can't do it anymore. And that was probably the longest 20 minutes of my life, of my career, because it was just. You come off and you look like you've done 3 games. Just felt exhausted because of that experience, and then getting that opportunity and the nervous energy that you would have had to put out there. It's like any pro footballer or young kid, it's realising your dream. And I was just lucky enough it was in the biggest kind of European competition in football.
Yeah, definitely. I just want to kind of touch on a couple of points during your opening season of your career. As I said, the following weekend, obviously you then make your league debut and you score. First of all, the feeling of scoring your first goal, if you can recall what was kind of going through your head at the time. I can imagine it would just have been a massive mix of emotions. And then afterwards in the changing room, what are you then thinking at full time when you've just made your debut in Europe and you've just scored and made your debut in what was the Premiership back then?
Yeah, it really mixed emotions, I think, of that game, because scoring my first goal with the Premier, making my debut and scoring my Premier League debut, and I was a left midfielder really, but again, Mike Walker had the confidence to play me in different positions, and I played up front with Chris Sutton. I wasn't the centre forward. That was Jamie Curran's job. My job was to create the goals, but he knew I had pace and he was quick, and playing off someone like Chris was, I guess, a good foil for him. So
yeah, I
remember scoring, and I remember. Well, I've seen it back now loads of times, and I look like a little child. It's ridiculous how young I look. This sort of curly mopped hair and skinny little body, and it's just pathetic. And I'm kind of doing this weird sort of hand kind of gesture where I'm just sort of celebrating. It's weird. It freaks me out a little bit when I watch it. But I do remember when I scored, it put us 2-1 up in the game.
Yeah.
And I just remember once I scored and getting back to the halfway line, I'm absolutely blowing because that kind of, again, I remember it being a really hot day as well.
Yeah.
And I remember kind of blowing, thinking, right, how long have we got left? And I'm thinking, please don't score, QPR. Just don't score.
Yeah.
Just don't let me score the winner. Please don't score. And then I think it was Les Ferdinand popped up and scored an equaliser, and we ended up being 2-2. And I was gutted. It's gutted, even though we got a half decent point against a good QPR side of the team who had at the time Les Ferdinand and Trevor Sinclair and all those type of players, and Ray Wilkins and those type of players, and thinking it wasn't a bad result anyway. But when you're so close to scoring a winner on your, scoring on your debut is brilliant, but if you'd have scored a winner on your debut, it would have been even better. So I remember being in the changing rooms afterwards and everybody just saying well done and pat me on the back and saying brilliant, congratulations and all that, but also having a little sense of disappointment that we didn't win the game.
Yeah.
And I think that's, again, as much as you want to do well for yourself, you want to win the game as well. And although I scored, it just had the tarnish sort of wiped off it, a little bit, just sort of put a bit of tarnish on it just because we didn't win the game.
Yeah.
It's mad really, because even your Premier League debut, that would have been a big game at the time. Like at that time, that was arguably one of the better QPR teams in recent years.
Yeah.
The players they had and everything. So the trust was there, obviously. Like, were those conversations had, like that they were trusting you now and you were ready to go first team level, or was it just if you got on, you got on?
Yeah, I think Mike Walker was very much. I can't ever really recall having any conversations with him, called into his office or anything like that. It was literally you're in the squad, and then you're playing. You know, it was a bit like that. I think that was his way of doing it. He just sort of shrugged his shoulders, and he didn't kind of want to put any pressure on you by getting too many ideas in your head. And I'm saying about Dean Bowden, the instructions he had, I don't think Mike Walker probably gave me that many, because he was just had the confidence in you to go out and what you could do.
Yeah,
and I think he had so much confidence in his other players as well to look after me on the pitch. It was such a good team we had at that time. That he knew that, and he knew he had loads of leaders in that squad and that team that would look after me as well. So I think he knew, as a manager, actually, you know, his job was, don't get me wrong, wasn't easy, but he knew he had the players he could rely on, where actually his job was made a little bit easier by the group he had.
Yeah, definitely. After that debut season in the Premier League, Norwich, then the following season, it's a horrible season for the club. We go on a disastrous run of form towards the end of the season, and
I know she said we then, James.
Yeah, well, Norwich fan. Yeah, 100%. That's why I'm. Yeah, I mean, I was too young at this point. I don't remember my first season. I think was the 95-96 season. But we, you know, obviously we get relegated that season. You mentioned at the time, you know, so you mentioned a couple of years later you didn't want to leave the club. At this point, after you've made your debut season, you've got another year in the Premier League. Any sort of reservations about wanting to stay at the club? Were there any sort of discussions? Did you any sort of thoughts that you may have had of potentially wanting to leave, or what, you know, how were you feeling at the end of that season?
No, 100% not. I was pleased I got in the team, and I loved playing my football there. I think if any player would tell you, if you're enjoying your football, why would you want to leave? I was playing, well, obviously we then got relegated, but I had belief that the team we had, Martin O'Neill was a manager at the time, who had then come in, and we started the next season really well. Look, we were going to then go back into the Premier League. So,
yeah,
you know, we'd signed some really good players, and it didn't work out. But even, you know, playing the Championship for a few years, I loved playing at the club. I was very happy. You know, of course, I would have looked at it financially, and actually, you know, the contract I signed before I left, a few years before I left Norwich, was Premier League money,
right.
And I was happy. You know, I didn't feel like I needed to go and search for that. You know, I was just loved playing football, and I think sometimes it's nicer probably being a big fish in a smaller pond than it is going somewhere else and, you know, maybe sitting on the bench a bit and having to prove myself again. You know, I was kind of, it sounds a bit of an arrogant thing to say, but I was kind of the alpha male at the time, and I was, you know, I was winning player of the seasons, I was top goal scorer and stuff like that, and everybody was talking about me. So I was happy where I was. I had no thoughts of moving.
No, fair enough. That first season back in what was League One then, as you said, Martin O'Neill was a manager at the beginning of the season. It started off quite well, and then it seemed to take a bit of a downward turn after he left. Can you kind of put your finger on why things changed after he left and Gary Megson came in to take over?
Because he left and Gary Megson took over. Simple as that.
Simple as that.
It was just, you know, Martin O'Neill was a great manager, a huge amount of admiration for him. In terms of a man manager, he was the best I played under. I mean, I didn't play under, well, I played under loads of managers at Norwich, but Martin O'Neill was just a great man manager, and got the best out of his individuals. And some of those individuals he had weren't very good, but he managed to somehow, a hook or by crook, whether it's giving him a kick up the arse or putting his arm around them, he treated them all differently. And it was as simple as that. And I remember the day it happened when he left, we were playing Leicester, and we would come down for the morning meeting, got called in for the normal sort of Saturday morning for the meeting before the game, and Martin doesn't come in, and it's like, well, where's the gaffer? And then we get told he's left. So we went into that game being told he'd left, and I think it was a few days later he'd announced that he'd signed for Leicester. I truly believe if we'd have kept him at the football club, we would have got promoted. I think he was you know, I think he showed at that time he was probably one of the most sought after managers in the country, and was very successful where he'd been. So it was a real shame. You know, he had a really good time at Wycombe, come to us and was doing really well, and subsequently he showed at Leicester how good he was. So he was a very honest manager, where he wanted things done, not that things done his way, but he didn't want anybody to interfere in his team and what he was doing and how he wanted to build it.
Yeah.
And unfortunately at the time at Norwich, some decisions were kind of taken away from him, and he didn't want that. And he wasn't prepared to do that, and I admire him for that. And he moved on and had success elsewhere.
Yeah, definitely. The following season, you end up top goal scorer under Mike Walker. He comes back for his second spell. That overall season as being top goal scorer, what was it like playing under him again?
Yeah, really good. He knew me, I knew him. We'd pulled in some old faces. I think Ian Crook came back, and there's good players. But it's really difficult. They always say the second spell at anything, isn't it? It's difficult to go back, and he never had that success that he had the first time round. But that wasn't due to the way he managed it. It was the group of players he had. Success is built of the manager and the players. It's not one or the other. Yeah. And I just think he never had the group he had from the first time he was there. And the club financially wasn't in a massively strong position, and it cut its cloth accordingly with the type of players they were signing. And it was just a steady decline. And I think, as historically Norwich has done over the years, they tend to have some success and then fall away and rebuild, and then have some success and then fall away and rebuild. And it was on a sort of slippery slope at the time. Yeah,
and at the end of that season, you were named in the Pfa Team of the Year. I have to ask this question: as a player, what do those kind of things mean to you at the time? Is it a really nice thing to kind of be recognised, or do you not kind of think about those in too much depth? Are you just more concentrated on about what's going on as a team aspect?
I think it's down to the individuals. For me, it was a personal accolade that I was very proud of, because it's your peers that are choosing it, the players you're playing against, and I could sense it anyway. I remember playing in games in that season, and players sent to me before the game, and I could hear them talking, and they didn't want to mark me. So you kind of knew that you're having a decent season. So I'd probably been disappointed if I didn't get in it. But I think it's when your peers are voting for you, and they're admiring you, and they think you're the best in that position in that league. It's a sort of a proud achievement, really. And that was the time, I think, particularly in those sort of years in the Championship, there was some, well, League One as it was then, or whatever it was, I can't remember what it's called, but there were some brilliant players. There were some fantastic players playing in them days. It's a bit more of a gulf now, I think, between the Premier League and the Championship. Championship sides back then there were some good sides and some good players. I think would probably a lot of those sides in the mid-90s of Championship teams would walk away with some of the championships now again, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Following season, Mike Walker's still there. He leaves towards the end of the season. It's then obviously the second time. This is obviously the second time that he's left the club. For you as a player, having that kind of manager who knows your game inside out, was it sad to see him go again?
Honestly, do you know what? I don't think I wasn't bothered. I wasn't the type of player that buzzed off a certain manager. I enjoyed working with different managers, different coaches, and actually sometimes a new face is a good thing. Freshen up with new coaches, new players. I was always the belief that I would go out and play the best I could play in every single game I went into anyway. So I didn't need to be motivated by someone else. I could do that myself.
Right.
So of course, you never had that success again. Those type of decisions are completely out of my hands. It was relevant to me who the manager was. I was just pleased that I knew if I was playing well, I'd be playing, and that for me was the most important part. And we had it was a massive turnover of managers from that kind of period onwards. It was just ridiculous for the next sort of 3 or 4 years, and even just before Mike come back. I mean, it was, like I said, it was Gary Megson, there was Brian Hamilton, it was just with Bruce. It was just all sorts of managers coming and going. There was no real stability at the football club. So, if anything, I had to be even more disciplined to make sure that I was still getting the best out of myself whilst all that was kind of happening around me.
Can I touch on something there? I mean, previously said in the dressing room, really were sort of a leader, you're performing well, you're able to motivate yourself. How much did it become your job through those transitions and periods of change at the club to help nurture and lead other other lads in the dressing room to help them out, because not everyone with that experience would be able to easily cope with that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I led by in terms of vocally in the changing rooms. I wasn't a big talker. I wasn't a big shouter. I didn't drill or drive people on the pitch. I led by example. I think I by the way I performed and the way I carried myself on and off the pitch. I kind of did it that way. Do you know what? Even in training, I was a shitbag. I used to just I'd be an absolute session killer, where the coach will set his session up and I'll go and kick all the cones over and stuff like that. I was just, but that was the way I kind of manifested myself to be the way I was. It was just what I did. I was annoying, and I think that was just the way I was to make me probably the player I was. I was just an irritant sometimes, and for me it was about having a laugh and a joke, and that was the way I relaxed and kind of winding people up. So I wasn't a leader in the sense of a shouter and a baller or a motivator. I was just led by example. I played on Saturday, and I hope that I've just been watching this Michael Jordan series, The Last Dance, and it's really weird how I guess kind of being perceived as an elite athlete in terms of what I did in the Premier League and all that. You kind of see similarities of how he was to try and pull people around him. And I know you're talking very different levels from what he was doing, but I think probably at that time, like you're saying, I wasn't. Michael Jordan wasn't a motivator, but he dug them out if they weren't doing well enough. He'd push them to try and bring them up to his level. I think he did that by leading by example. He would never ask anyone to do anything that he couldn't do himself. And I think I tried to do that during that time. I knew I was kind of the man, essentially, in the team. I knew that I could, by the way I played and how well I did, would hopefully bring everybody else on to those levels. So, yeah, I mean, it's all down to individuals again, isn't it, in terms of your personalities. But, I was an irritant. I can guarantee you that. I probably wasn't the greatest to manage. The manager was fine. I know I've never had any beef, never had any grief or anything with managers at all. Never had any arguments in changing rooms. Never did any of that. It was just a day-to-day basis of that's the way I got through training, was just to be an irritant. And
at that time, who do you sort of recall from the dressing room that was being loud and taking the reins when you could argue so many managerial changes? There was instability.
Yeah, there was a few. I mean, Ewan Roberts was a big leader. Malky Mackay, Craig Fleming, Mike Milligan to a certain extent. So we had plenty of them. So they were there. So that was the role they kind of filled, and I became that kind of, I guess, the talisman that did the stuff on the pitch. That hopefully that did my talking for me. I was never a leader in the sense of shouting and bawling or that sense. I think I was just more, it sounds terrible to say, not in it for myself, but I was very selfish in terms of making sure that I got out of the game what I wanted to get out of it and how I played. I wasn't asked about anybody else. If they could try and be as good as I could if they wanted to, and I hope they would be. But I was concentrating on myself doing the best I could. I wasn't too worried about trying to get everybody else to do the same.
And prior to the move away from Norwich, one thing I just want to kind of ask you is, there's a lot of stuff going on and off the pitch. Managers are coming and going, as you quite rightly said. Finances are a problem for the club as a whole. There's a lot of turmoil going on and off. What made you stick around with the club as long as you did, when quite clearly you were obviously one of the best players at the club? The talent was there, the interest was there, from what I can remember and what I've done research-wise. You could have quite easily seek to move away. So prior to the fact that the Bruce Rioch conversation happened in the 99-00 season, what made you stick around at the club?
I think it was purely because I was playing so well, and I didn't want to upset that. I was loving my football, and I loved the area. I loved living here. My wife and my kids were all born here. It was being around the place. I was settled. I was happy. And I think if you're settled and a happy player, you play your best football. And of course, there was always a financial element to that. And prior to that, Bruce were having a conversation. You know, I'd signed. I mean, I must have signed a new contract every 6 months. You know, and the money was going up and up and up every single time. It was ridiculous. So financially I was happy. So, you know, and that was that. I wasn't striving to, because you know, prior to that I'd got in the full England squad as well. You know, and I was like, well, you know, that will come. I was still young enough. I still believe that could happen, but I thought by doing the best I could do where I was would ultimately take me there anyway. So I had no reason to leave. I just loved playing football and playing for Norwich, and you know, I think once you're admired somewhere, and it's very difficult to leave. I think if you're feeling settled and everything's happy and you're playing well, I had no reason to. I was never chasing the money because I was on decent money at Norwich. So
yeah,
it's about actually can we get Norwich back in the Premier League? That's what ultimately what I wanted to do. Whilst I was a big player at the club. Yeah, it was never in my mind. Honestly, the day I got told I was leaving by Bruce was the biggest shock ever. I had no idea it was coming.
So when that conversation does come around, you mentioned about the fact that he said if you don't go, the club is in serious problems. Did you honestly believe that? Did you? I mean, like,
yeah,
because you know,
I did. We all did as players, sensed it. There was lots of stuff in the media. There was lots of talk about financial trouble, and you know, they'd sold Chris Sutton, they'd sold Will Fox, they'd sold all these players around us. We knew something was up. We knew times were tough.
Yeah.
And so I think we knew, and I kind of knew what was going on, but I didn't ever think that I'd be a pawn in that. I thought it'd happen differently. I didn't think it would happen when it did. It happened mid-season. I thought it would be later, and I was probably prepared for it at the end of that season, or perhaps sometime during the season after. It came earlier than I thought. And you know what, as well, like, you know, again, you know, Delia and Michael were taking over the club at the time, and they were just the most wonderful people to work for and play for.
Yeah.
But I felt for them as well, and I wanted to try and do the best for them. And to hear that their football club, they'd bought, could potentially go under, was like, I don't want that to happen. And even when I did move, I remember Delia sending me she made my wedding cake. You know, that's how good it is. And she sent me a postcard. So it had gone through the post, and everybody would have seen it. She sent me a postcard when I moved to Leicester, saying how much she wished me all the best and thanks for the many years of service. And she drew a picture of somebody crying on it. You know, it was just the emotion and how well she appreciated the players around her and the club she had and the feeling around the club. And that was difficult to leave, really difficult to leave.
Yeah. Was again, kind of forgive my knowledge at the time because I was only like 9 or 10 when this kind of happened. But were there any other clubs that came in for you when the Leicester bid was accepted, or was it only Leicester that offer at the time? If you don't mind me asking.
Well, I knew Everton were in as well. I kind of, not discarded, sounds the wrong thing to do, but I wasn't, because it was so far away.
Right, fair enough.
I know, and then it became a bit like that because I love Norfolk and Norwich so much, and we planned that my wife was going to stay here initially, and we were always going to come back here, and we want to keep a house here. Like, I didn't want to be moving that far away, and so Leicester was the closest Premier League club to it. There was always talk of Tottenham, which I think, if and had been seriously would have come of that would have been a serious thought for me, because obviously I supported them. So
yeah,
and I'm sure there was. You know, I was told that there was quite a few clubs interested, but you know, I'd had knee trouble at the time, and I'd had a few injuries, and Leicester and Martin O'Neill in particular was a big pull for me because you know they were doing well in the Premier League at the time.
I was just going to ask, was he a massive factor in moving as well?
Yeah, he was. You know, and to work with people you worked with before and have that, you know. And the kind of even having when I went down for my medical and talking to him and how infused and how much he wanted you to be part of what he was doing was a great sell. You know, I even remember having my medical, and you know, I had my scans on my knee because I'd had a few operations, and you know, the troublesome kind of left knee that I had, and we were sitting down with the surgeons and the people who read the scans and all that, and they were saying, you know, they're asking opinions, and the surgeons saying, well, look, he could play for 6 months, he could play for 16 years. We don't, you know, we don't really know.
Yeah,
it's difficult to say. And I remember Martin O'Neill just saying, I don't care, I want to sign him, and that was it. And that again gave you that immediate confidence to somebody really wants you here, wants you to be part of what he's doing. So
that must feel incredible when someone says that.
It does. It's just a massive pat on the back, isn't it? To think someone admires you in a sense that they think, as a Premier League manager, and say Leicester at the time were a really good Premier League side. They had full of amazing talent. He thought I could improve that. It was kind of a real kind of proud moment. And
for the club, as when you do move to Leicester, in terms of an opening season for you, being there, obviously I know you weren't involved in the final of the League Cup, but they win the League Cup, they qualify for Europe, they finish in 8th place. You must have felt like any reservations that you may well have had about moving, or any sort of doubts at all. You must have been thinking at the time, okay, now is my moment. This is incredible. Like, I've hit the jackpot, really.
Yeah. Do you know what? When I first went, I really struggled mentally with it. I felt huge amounts of pressure. I was Leicester's record signing at the time, and that weighed heavy on my shoulders. The pressure of, I think, proving to Martin O'Neill that I was what he thought I was. Going into that Leicester changing room, and I tell you what, I thought that the Norwich changing room, or senior changing room, was a tough place to be. That Leicester changing room, the characters in there were just incredible. You're talking Tim Flowers and Steve Walsh and Matty Elliott and Jerry Taggart and Neil Lennon and Robbie Savage and Emil Heskey. It was a list of absolute brutes, and it was like, it was how it sounds. It was brutal. They were relentless, and I felt, they saw this young lad coming in from Norwich who was on decent money. I was on more money than they were all earning. When I was at Norwich, I know that for a fact. So for me to kind of turn up as I did, they must have been looking, thinking, who's this little punk coming along here to, try and join in our team that's already successful. And I felt, I did feel huge amounts of pressure to perform, and I think I struggled mentally with that. I found it quite tough.
Can I ask, on a broader level, is the pressure of the price tag as such handed to you at a club level, or were you only putting that upon yourself personally?
I think I put it on myself personally. It was always there. It's up in lights, isn't it? You sign, record signing. Back it was record signing. Obviously,
media love it, don't they?
Yeah, and someone's going to come along and beat that without a doubt. But at the time, the pressure was there. And again, it's all down to individuals, I suppose, how they deal with it differently. And I think I took it upon myself because I had to prove myself again. I think that was the difficulty of it. At Norwich, it was comfortable. I was safe. I was playing well. I was, everybody knew what I could do. I felt comfortable. I felt confident everything I went to. I think it's like starting a new school. It was like nerves were there. It took time to settle in it, improve my place. And I think they were such strong characters in that changing room. Look, if you had a crap game, they would tell you. And it was like, I wasn't used to that. I wasn't used to people telling me, I needed to do better at something. I was used to people patting me on the back and actually being the best player on the pitch. Whereas now I was kind of one of those other players that had to prove himself. And that did weigh heavy on my shoulders. And it took quite a while to kind of settle into that. And the injuries along the way didn't help. I kept getting the injuries and I wanted to prove myself, and I get another injury. And then, it's one after another. And, ultimately it all ended up with my career finishing. But, I never... The one thing I probably regret about my career is I didn't think I did as well as I could have done at Leicester because of the injuries. I think played a big part in that. I never felt like I was fully fit. Whether I was fully fit when I went there, again, is another probably conversation to have.
Definitely. It's interesting then, kind of going through the seasons at Leicester. In your time there, I mean, as a club, they were, they had, wouldn't say average seasons after that point, but they were kind of there or thereabouts in terms of the table, weren't they? But as you mentioned there about the fact that you kind of struggled to set a win and stuff like that. It's, I don't know, I'm trying to think of the right way to phrase this. As you said, injuries playing a massive part here. Where's your kind of mental side of things at the time when you're starting the following season then? Especially the 0001 season where you've had that time to embed in, you're coming back into pre-season. How are you feeling at the time?
I felt really good. Martin O'Neill had left. I mean, he went to Celtic. So, you know, that wasn't the reason I felt good. It's because I felt it's almost a little bit of a weight off my shoulders that he did leave, because it was like, you know, that was a manager I didn't have to prove to again now. You know, I was on a clean slate with everybody else because a new manager was coming in. You know, none of those other players had anything to prove to Martin O'Neill. They'd already done it. Yeah. I still had to prove that when I went in. And I think the new manager coming in, it was kind of a clean slate for everyone. And I felt good. I felt really good in pre-season. I had a good pre-season. Felt fit. Felt fast, and you know, as good as I've felt for a long time. Yeah. And then I got into that season, and things just started to go wrong with my knee, and that was the most frustrating thing ever, because, you know, I always got back. I mean, I've had 26 operations on my knee, and I got back from all apart from 26, and that I always felt I would, you know, but it got to a point where it was, you know, I couldn't play the way I wanted to play, and the decision was kind of taken out of my hands. Really, it was tough, really tough. Considering, as I say, I felt good. I felt I was on the same par as everybody else. Had a good pre-season. You know, it's difficult to walk into a football club halfway through a season when they're being successful, to try and feel part of it. I don't think I ever really felt part of it until that second season. And then you know, we're all starting again, and you know, we're doing okay. But for me personally, yeah, it kind of ended up not being great by the end of it.
Yeah. I obviously, with it being a knee injury, it might sound a bit of a daft question, but in terms of your overall game, like, you know, your primary thing was your pace, wasn't it? That was one of your main attributes. How much does that start to get affected as the injuries just keep on happening? You know, how easy is it to be able to recover from that, not just physically, but also mentally as well?
Absolutely killed me. You know, the hardest thing in the world for footballers is to sit on the sidelines and watch your mates playing. Even on a day-to-day basis of being in the changing room. You know, you're not on a match day. You're not really in the changing rooms. In a training day, you're not in the changing rooms really. You know, in a different schedule. You're not training with the lads, so you feel like an outcast. It's a really difficult place to be. You're kind of isolated, a bit like we're in isolation now. But you know, you want to get back. You're looking out the window, looking at the lads training, and you want to get back. And yeah, it's really tough. Any footballer will tell you the worst thing about being a footballer is when you're injured. It's a tough time. But I always felt, you know, I said I had these operations before, and I always came back from them, and I always felt good. Yeah. So I always had that in my mind, like I'd be back and I'll be good again, and everything will be all right. You know, until the day I got told I wouldn't play no more, and then that was to say, as much as leaving Norwich was a shock, that was the biggest shock ever. You know, and I remember it vividly to this day of waking up in a surgery in a recovery room of the hospital, and my wife and the physio and the doctor were already in there, and I'm like, they're not normally in the recovery room. They're normally back in my room later on when I see them. Yeah. So I woke up and thinking, well, what are they doing here? And it was literally, you know, how did it go? And they're like, you know, why's my wife here? And they're like, well, you know, your girlfriend, you need to know, you know, your career's over. And that's it. And that was it. It was like, you're done. And that was it. It was like waking up thinking, you know, we can go into rehab and we can rehab you for the next 6 months to a year to make sure you're in the best shape you can be in terms of normal life, but you cannot play football anymore. You know, you're not able to do it. And you know, as much as I hated it, and I tried to sort of come back from it, and you know, I knew myself, because even when I started to try and train from the operation before I had, when they told me it was over, I knew it was over, because I even in training, the pain in my knee was horrendous. And I'm thinking, this ain't going away. You know, whereas all the other operations I'd had, slowly I'd improve and things would get better. This wasn't going away. It wasn't going away, and I couldn't even run or sprint properly. It was just, so I knew, even before I went into that last operation, I thought I'm probably not going to get the answer I want, but still when I woke up to be told, you know, the major operation that I had didn't work, and that was it. It was done. So there's a few other things we can try and make it work, but you're going to be rehabbing for probably another couple of years to even get yourself potentially fit to even play again. And I'm like, do you know what? I can't do it anymore. Yeah. And it was a decision that said, you know, and that was a slim chance of even that happening. So it was the decision was kind of made for me, and that was it.
At the time,
but then a massive amount of sort of injustice felt by you at that point, because things were being pulled away from you completely out of your control. When before, when you've had numerous operations, you've been able to get yourself back to a point where you can play.
Yeah, I felt cheated. I felt, and I was 28, so I was like, I should be at the peak of my career.
Yeah, very young.
Yeah, and I was being told, that's it, you're done. But I look back at it now and I think, well, I was lucky. I got into the first team at 18, so I had 10 years, really, which is still a half decent career, and not many players get in at 18 now. The more sort of early 20s or mid 20s before they get their opportunity. So I had it a long time, but I did feel like, I wanted to get back in the full England squad. I wanted to be part of that again, and I felt that it was cut short. But I didn't feel a sense of injustice. I felt, because I just felt like there was nothing I could do. It was out of my hands. There was, all the times I got back before, it was in my hands to be able to get fit again. But because the way my knee was, it was like, no, I know I can't.
Yeah.
So I think in the end, it was just kind of, underlining it really.
I think after that, initial point. Then after that news is told, what kind of what did you hear from Leicester at the time? Was there any support around from the club when that decision is made? Kind of who do you turn to then at that point, as for someone looking for help and guidance, etc.?
It was horrendous. People always say when you finish your career, you hang your boots up. You don't. You take them out. You take them down off the pegs and you take them home. I don't know why I was taking them, because I wasn't going to use them again. But I cleared out all my boots and pads and stuff and took them home. And I wanted out. I think Mickey Adams was manager of Leicester at the time when I left. He'd come in when I was injured, and he was great. He said to me, "Look, why don't you sort of get involved and maybe do a bit of scouting and see what you want to do and all that." And I'm like, "No, I want out. I just want out. I don't want to be part of it." To finish
Really?
at 28. Yeah, to finish at 28 and kind of, I didn't do anything with football for quite a few years after I finished playing, because it was like torture. I always explain it to people as like, whatever hobby you do, whatever you do that you love doing the most, the thing that gives you the biggest buzz in your life doing. If somebody tell you can't do that anymore, but you can watch your mates, you can go and watch your mates doing it. I was like, nah, you're right. No, thanks. It's not for me. So I backed away from the game completely. I didn't go and watch it. I didn't watch it on the telly, really. I didn't pay no interest in it. And it was even, the smells of the football ground and the sounds. I just didn't want to be around it because I couldn't do it anymore. So if I couldn't do it, I wanted to kind of shut myself away from it. And I couldn't wait to get out of there, to be honest. When I was told, I was like, I don't want to be around a training ground. I rehabbed for as much as I could, for as long as I could, just to get myself into a state where I could walk again all right. Yeah. And then I was out. I didn't want to be there because it was just a constant reminder. All the lads are still there. Their lives still go on. They're all still laughing and joking in the canteens and messing about on the training ground. And I'm there rehabbing for no reason. So I wanted out. So I got out as quick as I could.
And that period of time then, when you've decided you don't want to be around it, what is that like? Because I'm not going to even say that I've gone through anything similar to that experience, but I remember when I got an injury to my ankle, I tore 3 ligaments in my ankle. I was out for at least a 7 to 8 month period where I just shut myself away. I didn't go to work. I found things mentally very difficult. The most basic tasks suddenly became impossible. So to some extent, I'm not going to try and compare it to what you've gone through at all. But what were you like in that first, say for example, year, maybe 2 years after football? What are you going through?
I'd go a lot longer than the first 2 years. I'd argue up until probably, I finished 20 years ago now. 16, 17 years ago, a long time ago. But I'd argue up to 10 years, maybe even a bit longer after that. I went through mental health issues. I had depression. I suffered anxiety. I had terrible panic attacks. It was just, I shut myself away. I didn't want to be part of anything to do with football, and it affected my whole life. I couldn't see a future. I didn't know what I was good at. I didn't know what else I could go and do. Yeah. I felt just completely and utterly worthless. And and I think, you know, looking back on things now and the position I'm in now, ultimately, it even cost me my marriage. You know, it played a part in that. You know, I'm going for divorce at the moment, and it's horrendous. You know, there's things that happen in the marriage that I think can't be forgiven, and I played my part in that, I guess, to a certain extent. And we are where we are, and you know, I regret that massively, and I think it affected everyone around me, my kids, my wife. But you know, there's boundaries in marriages that you don't cross, and you know, it wasn't me that crossed that, but was I part of that? Probably. I probably played my part, and you know, I take responsibility for that, and it's tough. You know, I don't get to see my kids as much as I want to see them, and I don't get to spend every day with them. It's been a real difficult journey for everybody, not just myself. I'm sure it has for my children, and I'm sure it has particularly for my wife. So you know, it's no, you know, I think sometimes you can polish over the things you achieved in football. You know, I lost a sense of purpose completely when I finished playing. And I didn't know how to get that back, and I suffered for a long time of being probably a bit moody and a bit stroppy, and probably angry at everybody because I couldn't play football, because I couldn't do what I wanted to do, and and it was really tough, and you know, I still get days now where it's not great, but you know, I know now that actually there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and I'll get through it because I've been through it before. So you know, I'm a lot better at dealing with it, and that for me is something that is good that's come out of it. But I have my regrets from when I finished playing football, for the way it led and the way things have gone now. But you know, I guess that's my life journey. I can't change any of that now. Like none of us can. But it was mentally, it breaks you. It really does. You know, I thought finishing at 28, or you know, I'll be fine. I've got a bit of cash behind me. It'll be fine. I can retire. I can go and play golf and do all this and do that, which I did for about 5, 6, 7 years. Didn't do hardly anything. And then every day become the same. You know, I didn't know if it's like in isolation now. I didn't know if it's a weekday or a weekend. I had no idea. I was getting up at 10 o'clock. I was going to play golf, and you know, even going on holiday was a burden because it took organising. And it took some planning, and I didn't want to do that. I didn't know how to do anything really. So it was a really tough time. But probably not even realising that I was going through it. You know, I think it's only been in recent years that there's now a lot of talk about mental health, and you know, I think I was one of the first people that come out and talked about it. You know, I even not kind of introduced it to the PFA, but told them they needed to buck their game up, and went down and saw them and told them what was needed, and things have moved on. So, you know, I'm proud of that. But you know, for me, I didn't understand what was happening to me really. I thought it was just me. But looking back on it, it was the circumstances what created that, I think.
What made you reach out for help as such? Like myself, like I've suffered through some issues sort of more recently, really. But I think, like you said, I probably wasn't aware to start with. But it took someone else to tell me, as such, for me to actually then do something about sorting it. What was a trigger for you to start putting things right in your life?
I think things were happening around me. I think I literally couldn't get through from day to day without feeling just like, it's hard to describe. It's like having a fuzz in your head. It just felt like I was constantly had this fuzz in my head where I couldn't make sense of anything. I wasn't enjoying anything. Everything was a problem. You know, financially I was worrying and all this stuff, and I didn't realise it was going on. I knew I was feeling that, but I didn't know why I was feeling like that. But it got to a point where I felt so low. I've never felt like I wanted to take my life. I've never got to that stage. And I know a few people have, but I think I'm just too much of a coward. I don't think I could do it. And that sounds a really strange thing to say, but I guess for me it's more cries for help. I needed help because of the way I felt, and I've you know, it's only when you come out of that you realise just how bad you did feel. Because honestly, it was just every single day was like just pointless. It was just a blur, getting from day to day, and it was just horrible. but reaching out was a point where I'd seen sort of Clark Carlisle talk about a few things, and I spoke to him sort of very briefly, and just kind of said, look, I need to get some kind of help. I don't know what help I need. I don't know what it is I'm suffering from, but I need to get some help. I was very fortunate as well. I've got a brilliant local doctor who I'm sort of very friendly with, and that was a massive plus because, for me, I didn't, people. I remember people saying, well, the PFA says we'll ring the Samaritans, or spitting. It's like, well, how faceless is that? I don't want to ring up some stranger and tell them I'm feeling like crap. I needed to speak to someone that just understood what I was going through. And there wasn't anyone to talk to like that, really. Clark Carlisle was probably the only one at the time that had even mentioned it. And he was kind of getting overwhelmed by it himself. So it was like, who do I go to?
Yeah.
I didn't want to speak to a professional psychiatrist because I didn't want to be judged. I wanted to speak to someone over a coffee and tell them how I felt. And that's ultimately what I did in the end. And just beginning that process of talking about it was a massive weight off. It was just like the realization of actually, people say about criminals when they actually admit they've done something wrong, it's like a massive weight off their shoulders. And that's what it felt like. Just admitting that I had an issue and I needed to get some help was the beginning of it. I think,
right.
that first initial contact.
How long after the sort of like retirement and the final that sort of stage happened, how long after that did you have that conversation, if you don't mind me asking?
I would say, do you know what? It was a long time. I must have. When I finished playing, I didn't finish the day I played and fought under Preston.
No.
It was a kind of a slow demise over a few years, I think.
Right.
And you know what? My knee played a big part in it because my knee still hurt all the time, and I couldn't even go for a kickabout on the beach with my kids, or I couldn't give them piggybacks. I couldn't run. So all that anger just built up, I think, all the time because it was so frustrating. I couldn't just live a normal life, even though I was thrown back into this normal life. I couldn't live it because I couldn't do those normal things. So that all these type of things built up, and it probably wasn't until it must have been. I'm trying to think when I retired, 2003. It must have been 5, 6, 7 years afterwards.
Yeah,
I would say I probably went that far and got myself that deep. Because I think, I always blocked it out with the fact that I had a bit of money, I could do it when I'm safe here, this is all right. That kind of reassured me, I guess. But then when things started to change and all of a sudden, things aren't going well for you at home, and it just became a downward spiral. And it was a case of, look, my wife was brilliant. She was, I don't know what I would have done without her, but she didn't know how to deal with it. And one thing I hope people could do now is that people are going through that is actually, their partners and their peers to actually get the experience of what they can say and do to help, because they feel helpless as well. And it was massively tough for her.
Yeah. I think, Adam, you'll probably agree. I know I related to quite a few things that you said.
Yeah, I mean, I could almost I feel like for not the same length of period, I've felt many of those same feelings. Like you say, like the most basic of things just become confusing and your head gets messed up and everything. And it's difficult, but I mean, I've been quite lucky that I've managed to get support through NHS and sort of going through that now. But I found like the thing that has helped me the most, excuse me, out of all of it, has actually been the opportunity to speak to like a peer advisor. There is no prescribed, like, this is a treatment plan, this is what you're going to do. It is generally a chat.
Yeah.
And it's that necessity of just talking about what you've done and maybe things that you could think about doing just to try and help you out. That's where I feel like I started to turn a corner. Yeah, that was the biggest thing for me was not being judged by someone who's going to write something down in a book. On a look at me and then look at the clock to see what time somebody else next is coming in. It was about just opening up to someone who would empathise with it. And it's amazing once you do start to speak to people. I mean, when I did open up, the amount of people I knew that had similar things from all walks of life, from millionaires that I knew to just mates down the pub. And it's just,
my God, you just don't realise. You don't realise just how everybody suffers at different points in different times with varying different different degrees of suffering. It was a real eye opener to me to help that, and I think for me that then became a bit of a, if I can talk about stuff like that, and if one person can then help themselves by listening to me, then that's surely a good thing. So
yeah,
I think everybody's frightened by the stigma of it, and there is a stigma about it, and people talk about it, and it annoys me because people go on about how people get frustrated when they say, people say, oh, he's mental, or he's nuts, or he's like, well, that doesn't matter. I still use those terms, but it's not derogatory. It's just dialogue that we use. It's language we use. Mm-hmm. So I'm not offended by that. If someone says that, it doesn't bother me. But I think you find your own way. But I think certainly that easy route of just starting to open up without being judged was the biggest thing for me. Just someone to nod and empathise and say, I hear you. I've been through it myself, or I understand what you're talking about. That's what done for me. And then you could kind of see. I mean, it takes a long time. Don't get me wrong. It takes a long time to get completely out of it, and I'm not sure whether you completely do ever. I think you learn to manage it, and I think you learn to deal with it. And I think you become a better person for it. I'm certainly more empathic than I was, massively. Mm-hmm. I was quite, and I think a lot of footballers are quite selfish. I think you have to be to get where you want to be in football. You have to be a bit that way. Yeah. And I think you don't think about anything else apart from yourself because you have to be so drilled. I probably didn't think enough about my wife and my kids because I was thinking about the next game. Trying to make sure that was right. Yeah. And I think it's till you kind of come out of that, you then realise actually, how much empathy you need for other people. And actually what they're through. And I think you understand that a little bit more once you kind of show that side. I do. It's ridiculous, honestly. I watch telly now, and if there's like something remotely sad on an advert, I'm nearly in tears. It's just like, my God, my emotions have become so that my emotions are kind of just bubbling under the surface the whole time. That's what it feels like now. I'm kind of really sensitive to other people's emotions and how they feel and how I see stuff on the telly. And I'm kind of proud to say I'm on no medication. I finished about, it must have been 6 months ago now. I started on lots of medication when I finished playing football, and it helped. Do you know what? Again, it's one of those stigma things. You think, well, do you know what? It was the best thing ever because it took the edge off from the top and the bottom. I didn't get so high and I didn't get so low. It just took that edge off, and it helped me then develop to be able to move on and then get off them eventually. And about 6 months or so, I decided to go cold turkey, which wasn't the greatest idea at the time. just like it was a football, I thought I can do this. I'm confident, I can do this.
That made you feel pretty ill, didn't it?
Oh my God! I tell you what, for the first 10 days, 2 weeks, it was. I timed it right, so I made sure I did it over a half term from when I was working. So I had no responsibilities in terms of work. I knew I could do it, but oh my God, the sleep patterns, the hallucinations, the anxiety, it was through the roof. It was weird, the dizziness, everything I had. But then after about 10 days, 2 weeks, that started to dissipate and it started to get better and better and better until I kind of felt completely normal. And I am where I am now. And it's like, I'm glad I did it. I probably shouldn't have done it that way. And they never advise you to do that. And doctors never advise you to do it. They advise you to come off it slowly. But I just thought, do you know what? It's a challenge. And I like to challenge, always have done. And I think I put myself through it. And it was another fight for me to do and another challenge for me to put myself through. And I'm sort of proud to say that I don't take anything anymore, which is, but I don't judge anybody that does, because it was a massive help to me. It was I would certainly recommend to anybody just to get yourself through the real worst times, the real bad times. Is don't be too proud, don't be too embarrassed, don't be anything. Just get in there and do what you need to do, because it will make you feel better.
I'm sure you'd support this notion as well, but I think a lot of people think that if you take a tablet, you'll fix yourself and it will all be gone. But it's the talking that fixes you, and the knowing of the changing change your routine, and it's the tablet itself that gets you back to some more manageable levels, not ones that can be fixed.
Definitely. I mean, the rationality of it all was horrendous. That for me, in terms of the anxiety, it was just completely irrational. The panic attacks, I look back on it now, and it you know, feels a little bit embarrassing to think why I was panicking and why I was getting so stressed and anxious about those things. You know, they don't seem like anything. You know, I lost my mum 2 years ago now, and she had a brain hemorrhage all of a sudden, and she's only 62. And like, I've gone through that as well, and it's like I feel a much stronger person for all these things happening. But nothing seems to bother me that much anymore. I don't seem to get anxious about those things anymore because they're not important. You know, the things that really used to bother me don't bother me anymore. And I think it was a real kind of eye-opener to me that showed when I was in those depths how irrational and everything became. And just by getting that medication, I think it took away, as I say, the top and bottom of that. I still thought irrationally and I still had those feelings, but they weren't as bad. So like you say, it gave me the opportunity to give that process of just starting to come out of the fog. And once you get one half a, you know, even having a good half an hour was like amazing. And then all of a sudden it becomes, 45 minutes and then an hour. And then the next day you're getting 2 hours, or, you know, a week's time you're getting half a day where you feel all right. And it's a long process, but it does get there. And eventually you do. And then now, you know, I count the times when actually I've had a few bad hours today or whatever, you know, and I acknowledge it and I move on from it. And I don't sink down to where I did before because, you know, quite frankly, I've had probably the most traumatic 3 years of my life in the last 3 years. And there's nothing in this world that kind of frightens me anymore to make me feel that way. So, you know, whether that's for those experiences or whether it's through an accumulation of the medication that I had, to the experiences and actually getting the help I needed, I think has pulled me through all that.
Yeah, I just sort of listening to that. I've gone through quite a few things myself, especially probably the last 5 years or so. But I was very much the opposite to what you've been talking about there. The moment any sort of medication was suggested, I instantly dismissed it because of the stigma that was involved in it. I said, I don't want to be on that. I don't want people knowing that I'm on that. And like the moment you mention it to people, everyone's like, oh no, you made the right decision. Don't go on that. Don't do that. No, that would be the worst thing for you. And I just found that I could, when you start having those kind of conversations with people, you start switching off because the people you're turning to then for advice are then, they're sort of like, not, I would say trivializing it, but they're just not taking it seriously. And because there's that stigma attached to it, I felt like I couldn't talk to people. So I had to go to an individual who had no prior knowledge to what was going on in my life. And I had to go and talk to somebody who knew nothing about it. And it's just, you know, everyone's circumstances are different, but I think what has come from the conversation that we've all had here is that just talking about it is half the battle. Just
but they say talk to your friends, but sometimes it can be worse because they'll say the things you don't want to hear. Like, you know, don't take medication, you don't need to do that, it's worse. Do you know what? Drop them into your world for a week when you're feeling like that and see if they feel the same way. It's very easy to, and that's the one thing I've learned from it is, you know, don't judge people by the way they're feeling. Don't try and tell them what to do. Just give them options as to what are the possibilities they can do. You know, I think being a footballer as well, I think medication to me was never something, you know, men have always had this traditional, I don't go to the doctors, I'm not going to talk, I'm not going to do any of this. Football's quite the opposite really in terms of medication and seeing the doctors. You know, we'd have a doctor on call the whole time, so you know, I've never had a problem with going to see the doctor. And you know, I remember instances at Leicester where players are going in and bending over in front of the doctor and telling them to look at a boil on their arse because it was there and they could do it. So it's just, you know, it was easy. We had it on call. But I do understand the stigma kind of attached to it. But as I say, that's why for me it was about speaking to someone who wouldn't judge me, who didn't know me that well. Because you're right, people don't want you to take medication because they're frightened of what it's going to do to you. So they say, oh, don't take that, it's the worst thing you could do. But actually not knowing, you know. So for me it was about someone actually not saying any of those things, not telling me what to do, but just listening and kind of empathizing with how I felt and saying, you know, there are different ways you can get some help and, you know, you will come out of this. You will be better.
Yeah, definitely. Moving on then to when you are going through those kind of stuff, when you've had that break away from football, what was the turning point to then start coming back into the scene and start getting more involved with football? Was there, how did that feel, kind of after having shunned away from the limelight and from football for a period of time?
I think it was probably turning about 35, maybe a bit older, thinking, you know what, I'm too old to play now anyway.
Right.
And also, a lot of my friends who I played with retired as well. So it was kind of a different generation of football.
Yeah.
And I think it became a little bit easier because my mates weren't playing anymore.
Right.
That was easier to watch. Most of my teammates had finished playing, so it was a lot easier to kind of not think about those times when I played with them.
Yeah.
So I think the time scale was a big factor for me. And then just getting back into it and kind of loving the game again.
Yeah.
Even when I played the game, I wasn't a massive. This is a really strange thing to say, but I wasn't a massive football lover. I didn't live and breathe football. When I was away from it, I didn't watch it. I didn't play FIFA. I didn't do any of that.
No.
So I quite happily step away from it, and that was the way I dealt with it. But I think getting back into with my brother-in-law Chris Wigger and working with him at Sheringham has kind of given me that hunger for it. I'd never had any intentions of being in management, never wanted to do it, never wanted to be a coach, do any of that. But then working with him was like, it was just a breath of fresh air to be back in the changing room with a bunch of lads that do take on your opinion and listen to what you want to say, and then seeing the results of that. But if I wasn't doing it with Chris, I wouldn't be doing it. He's my brother-in-law, but he's also my best mate. And it's like, I'm proud to do that, have that experience with him and experience that with him and try and see where we can go with it.
Yeah.
If it is any other way, I don't think I'd be doing it. But I think we bounce off each other really well. We work together really well. We've known each other since we were kids. So, we've got a really good rapport. We believe in the same things. We've got the same kind of morals. We think the same way. So it's just a really nice balance to have someone to bounce off. I think if I was doing it individually as a manager, I'm not sure to be so keen, but it's nice to be alongside someone that you really care about and you want to succeed with.
That's interesting. From your time in non-league, having been in the pro game for such a long period of time, what do you make of non-league overall?
It's been brilliant. I've really enjoyed it. It is. It's back to where I was as a kid. It's playing in sometimes some shitty pitches and crappy changing rooms and cold floors and horrible. Wind is blowing and the nets are hanging off, and there's all this happening at some of the levels we've been involved at. But that's football for me. That's what I enjoyed as a youngster. That kind of bring all those memories back of playing Wembley and stuff when you're a kid.
Yeah.
It's kind of real. It felt real, and the characters in the changing rooms again. It doesn't matter if you're in a pro environment or a non-league environment. It's about the people that are in it, and at Leicester now there's some really, really good people involved in the football club. We've got some really, really good players at the football club, and some more coming in. We're in the process of signing at the moment. So we're excited to get going, and really looking forward to it. But it just feels a bit raw, and it feels a bit right, and it feels a bit ready to be involved in, because it just feels. It feels like it's stepping away from that elite environment for me has actually been a nice thing. It's back to, I can have an effect. I can have an influence on what we're doing, and the lads are really respectful and they want to learn. And I hope that, it's been pleasing for me to see that they take that on board.
Amazing stuff. So the kind of the move to Leicester, and how did just to briefly kind of talk about that before we go on to Twitter questions? How did that come about? And obviously, you mentioned about your brother-in-law. Obviously, he's a joint manager as well. What kind of conversations happened, prior to you joining to Leicester, and what made you decide to go there?
Well, I've worked at St Joseph's College in Ipswich. I moved over to the dark side into Suffolk to work, and so I'm involved with the school there, and obviously we're involved with a few sort of clubs locally. And then I was working with Chris at Sheringham, and the Leicester job come up once, and I think Glenn Driver then went back. And I'd kind of spoke to someone at the time, Dave Williams, who's the physio at Leicester and runs Sports Med East. I'd spoken to him because he worked for the school as well. They provide physios for our school environment, for our kids, for their rugby and for the football and all the other sports at the school. Mm-hmm. And I'd spoken to him and said, look, if the opportunity comes up again, just think about it. Because the experience I had with Chris, it was like, I think we deserve to go to a higher level. We proved ourselves. And he said, because I spoke to him the first time, and he said, "Oh, if you'd have been a couple of weeks earlier, something, we might have been able to have a chat, but they've just taken Glenn back, which is great, and he kept them up in the league, which is brilliant." Yeah. And I just said to him, "Look, if anything ever opens up again, just give us a call. I'd be like to have a chat." And obviously the situation happened at Leicester where Glenn said he was going to leave at the end of the season, and I think the club wanted to probably make that happen a bit quicker, because I think when a manager says he's going to leave at the end of the season, I think it's difficult to then kind of engage with the players and everybody, the staff, if it's inevitable he's leaving. So I think they wanted to try and make a change when they could at the time. And I then spoke to him again and said, "Look, I'll come and have a chat with you and Chris." And we went down, met Andy Crisp, the chairman, and I think it was Peter we met as well, who's on the board there, and just hit it off straight away. It was they're really good people. They run things the right way. So it's a really nicely run football club. It's got a good family feel about it. It's got a great pitch. The environment's good in it, and it just felt right. And I think we all knew from that one meeting that was going to happen. I think we made it pretty clear. We sat there for probably 2 or 3 hours chatting football and chatting what we wanted to do with the football club and how we want to move things forward. I think Leicester's had a lot of it's been quite unstable the last quite a few years now. I think it's had a lot of change. And it needs some stability. It's had a lot of success in the past, and I think they want to get there again. But my whole ethos with working with Leicester is working with the younger players, bringing in good young talent. I don't want any journeymen. I don't want people that are just coming in for the cash. We want a certain type of player that's going to improve the football club, not just on the pitch, but off it as well. So we're very cautious in who we choose and who we approach, and we want there for the right reasons. And I've always said, and I'm open with all my players. I want my players to play at a high level, whether that's with Leicester, with us, or whether they go on and do really well and move on again, then that's fine. I'm not going to stand in their way. I'm here to try and develop them and make them better. And working with former Norwich pros, and we've got some lads coming in from Ipswich and Norwich, and lads that have experienced that already, the pro game, and they're young and hungry lads that want to improve and want to get better. And I think that's been a bit of a change. There's always been a bit of a segregation between first team and reserves. We're trying to drag that gap and close that gap to make sure there is a pathway for right through the youngsters, the 18s into the 18 reserves and into the first team. Because if we're going to have players moving on, we want to make sure that we've got players that can step straight into those positions. And the type of players we're getting in, we know they can play in 2 or 3 positions. We want players that are adaptable. So we're excited to get going. We have the process of just making a few signings now, which we hope to be able to announce in the next week or so, which we're really excited about. So we can't wait to get cracking, really. But we understand the job ahead. It was a tough time for Leicester, and we understand that they survived by the skin of the teeth. So we know it's a rebuilding process, but having spoken to the chairman and the football club and what me and Chris want to achieve, that will take a bit of time. We can't expect to happen overnight. It's a rebuild, really. But we have ambitions to be challenged at the top of the league within a couple of seasons. But in the meantime, we need to stabilise, make sure we get things right and build from a new base, rather than kind of the change and insecurity that it's had for quite a few years now.
Definitely. And are you looking as well, like in terms of that development? You've mentioned loans and stuff with Ipswich and that. Are you setting yourself some personal goals to see if you can really help other players push their careers? And from a coaching perspective of that, are you hoping to look to help push other players on as much as you can?
Yeah,
whilst building that young squad.
Yeah, absolutely. That's part of the remit and the plan and kind of we're putting in place. We want those players who I believe can play at high levels. As I said, whether that's with Leicester and we move through the levels, or whether that's they do well and they move on the season after. If they're doing well, we're doing well.
Right.
But I believe I can add things to their games, and that's why we're making sure that we'll obviously have some experience in there somewhere. It's never you have to have in any successful football club, but we want those players that I think I can add to and who are biddable and want to learn and want to get better. So that's why we're making sure we choose the players that we want to, because I believe we can. And we're looking forward to doing that. But it is, I've been speaking to both Norwich and Ipswich in terms of Steve Weaver and Neil Adams and the likes of Bill Cluggan and stuff at Ipswich, and building relationships with them, and hopefully we'll be seeing some link ups with them too. And that's not link up for link up's sake. We won't just be taking someone because they think they want them in there. It's got to suit our football club, but we'll be in conversations with them on a regular basis to see what we can do if we need to.
Brilliant stuff. Let's finish off with some Twitter questions. We've had a few coming in on Twitter. We've had quite a few coming in on Instagram as well. So let's get into some of those if you're all right for time, Darren.
Go on in.
Yeah. So we've got Norwich City Central said, what's his opinion on the growth of the academy players at Norwich? It's been remarkable, especially over the last couple of years, to see so many players given the opportunity. What's your kind of thoughts and opinion on it?
Well, I think it's great. I've always been a huge advocate of Norwich's academy because I was a process in that at some point, and I've become a product of it. So, I know the benefit, as I said earlier, about that squad against Bayern Munich was 26 players with 13 youth products in it. So I see that especially a club like Norwich has to do that. It's in terms of financially to survive as well. So I think it's ran really well. It's been proven in the last few years. The amount of money they've generated from players, and the players don't hang about much anymore. You had to have. I must have been 8 seasons at Norwich before I moved on. Whereas now you can have one good season as a youngster and move straight on, for big money. So, financially for the club, it's a big earner for them. And I think, particularly Neil Adams, who they've got in terms of their loanees for their youths and their young players now, is a big asset because it's given, like we said earlier, about that experience for them as senior football. And they do things the right way. If a lad doesn't get taken on, they also try and help them out, finding another club and trying to help them out as best they can. So, we can see the development they've had in the last few years, and the fans love it as well. If you're bringing young lads through, it's such a to have one of our own, as they kind of say, is better than anything. So I think it's been hugely successful. And long may it continue, because it's certainly a massive cog in the machine of Norwich City when it is successful.
Yeah, definitely. Cheers for that question. We've got Luke Winchester says, back around 2002, he was linked with Ipswich Town. Was there any truth in that link at all? Would have welcomed him at the club.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah, I remember that happening, and I had mixed feelings about it, as you can imagine. Not particularly me, but I think that everybody I spoke to had mixed feelings about it, or they had very strong feelings about it. So, look, if there was no other club for me to be able to play for, then I would have, of course, I would have looked at it to see, because I'm a professional footballer. I want to play football, but it wouldn't be top of my list. I think anybody would say that, coming from an Ipswich to a Norwich, or Norwich to an Ipswich. Yes. Just because of the rivalry. But, I was a professional footballer and I want to play professional football. And if Ipswich was the only club I could play for, then so be it. It's a tough one to answer that, because, of course, there's rivalries there. And it's even difficult for me to move and work over the border. And just doing that was a strain. And even the school I work at has got an Ipswich Town badge on it. And I remember coming back to Norwich after work one day and meeting my daughter in the city straight after work, and she folded my top over so you couldn't see the badge, and she was 7. So she even felt it. So look, I think there's a healthy rivalry, and it's a good thing. I have a lot of respect for Ipswich, and I think most of the fans do for me. But I just, it's nice to wind them up, as I generally do when I'm on Sky.
That is very true. Although with that answer, I will find a way of editing that so you go, no, not at all. So I've had somebody called Craig Simpson, who's actually a good friend of mine from Non League Football. He said, "What is it like to look after my brother?" Now, I did ask him who his brother was, but I never got a response back. So does the name Simpson ring a bell with you?
Simpson.
Yeah.
What? No, it doesn't. I'm terrible for names. Honestly,
like I said,
how quick you've learned the squad this is.
You don't know who he plays for?
No, I did ask. I sent a reply back to saying what was his name, but I never got one back, and I just thought, well, I'll chuck it in and just see if the name rings a bell. But
if he does contact me on social media and explains it, I'll hopefully be able to answer it for him.
Yeah, okay. We've had the Leicester under-18s and EGA Twitter account get involved, saying what one piece of advice would Darren give younger Darren when he was breaking into senior football?
God, that's a tough question, that one. Do you know what? It's a difficult one because the process I went through and how my career progressed at that age, I won't say I did everything right, but I didn't do too much wrong. I kept, I was very focused in terms of my training. I think that was the important part because it's so easy to kind of switch off when no one's watching. It's easy to train hard when people are looking at you. I think the work you do away from everybody else is watching is hugely important for any youngster. The hard yards you put in away from the training field, away from the fixture, the stuff the manager doesn't see, the coaches don't see. That's the important part. Is when you really add that little bit extra and do an extra. So I think, yeah, I'd say that work ethic, it has to be. You've got to be totally focused. It's never enough. You can never do enough. You've got to keep pushing yourself the whole time. But certainly the work you do away from everybody else is watching is massively important because the players who do that are generally the ones that succeed.
Definitely.
Also, I would say, don't go stealing. I got caught shoplifting when I was at Norwich, so don't do that.
You've got to tell us about that.
Oh, don't know. It was when what a donut. I was a young kid at Norwich. I think I was even in the youth team. I was the schoolboy, and I'd never done anything like that before. But never done anything like that since, of course. And I just got caught up in the moment, and literally got caught. And I got arrested and taken back to my digs, and I had to phone my mum and dad up. And Gordon Bennett, who was the youth development officer at Norwich at the time, got the phone call, and I thought, this is it, my career's over. But luckily, I kind of got a slap on the wrist, and it was just. I mean, I nicked a tape as well. Even when tapes didn't exist anymore, but I nicked a tape. I remember what tape it was. Belle Biv DeVoe, Poison. It was the song. And I remember doing it, and I was like, "Oh my god,
yes,
yeah, that one."
Yeah.
So I mean, talk about we all do silly things as youngsters. It's inevitable. You do make some bad decisions, and that was certainly a bad one. But touch wood, lucky for me, I managed to put it behind me. But we all make silly decisions, and don't be embarrassed about that either. If you do the right thing, generally most of the time.
Just own it.
Just make sure you get away with it.
Oh, how different your career could have been if the club decided otherwise, eh?
I know. Can you imagine?
Yeah, definitely. Now, this next question is from my old man. When I phoned him and told him I've got you on the show, honestly, his reaction was absolutely brilliant. I wish I had recorded it. But he
you should have heard my dad's reaction, James.
I don't really want to know, mate.
Bloody Norwich player.
Yeah, I can. I can imagine. So my dad asked, it's a predictable question, but who does Darren consider to be the best player he's played alongside during his time at Norwich?
Ooh, it's a real tough one because it's hard to say. I mean, particularly the early years, as I said. I mean, that European team was just
something else, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. It was a complete team. There were some individuals in it, but it was just a complete team. It had a bit of everything, from obviously Gunny in goal and Culverhouse at the back, and Polston and Mark Bowen and Ian Crook, Rolf Fox, Fana Cuckoo, Chris Sutton, Jeremy Goss. It just had a bit of everything. So it's difficult to pick out one. But I guess the player I played with that I felt suited my game the most was probably Ian Crook because the passing ability he had.
What a ball.
Yeah. And do you know what? Massively underrated as well.
Mm-hmm.
He's what I like to call in football a risk taker. He was sometimes he would pass the ball probably a dozen times and maybe not unlock something 11 times, but then at one he would do. And I think people a lot of the time remember the 11 times he didn't. But he was a risk taker, and to make things happen, you've got to be a risk taker. And he was that, and that for me was important as a player, to know you could make a run, and he would find you with the ball. I suppose in terms of pure talent, Chris Sutton was probably the most complete player. I would say.
He was an incredible player, though, wasn't he, Chris Sutton?
Yeah, I mean, essentially,
he really was.
Forward and defensively, he was a brilliant central defender as well. A very dry sense of humour, we should say. But he's a good lad. He was my first roomie. He was as well.
Yeah,
really.
Yeah, and he's a tramp. You see, honestly, he looks like a tramp. He's dressed like a tramp. He's a mess. So I didn't have much to live up to in the fashion stakes, and I was started room with Suts. But great lad, really nice bloke, kind bloke. But I think he plays his persona very well. What he does.
Yeah, I think based on what you just said there, my old man's. I think from what he's told me, one of his favourite players of all time for Norwich was Ian Crook. I've only ever watched what my dad recorded for me on video. So I remember watching Ian Crook on video a lot when I was a kid, and he was a hell of a talent.
He had a telepathic understanding with Mark Bowen. You see so many goals Mark Bowen scored, like a reverse pass from Ian Crook, and Mark Bowen running up from left back and scoring. Yeah, so many times you see the highlights of that happening.
Yeah, definitely. So we've got two more questions for you. We've got Sports Medi says, what's the most overrated physical attribute for a footballer, and what's the most underrated? And in brackets, I think we know what he'll say for the first bit.
What's he say? What's the most overrated sporting?
Overrated physical attribute for a footballer, and what's the most underrated?
Ooh. Overrated is going to be size. You don't have to be big to be a baller.
Yeah, to look at Messi.
Well, exactly. Maradona, Pele.
Yeah.
All the best ones are little ones.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of, and the trouble is now a lot of kids. I think particularly English football went for a spell of actually you've got to be this big, brutal athlete to be a footballer, and I think a lot of kids were discarded quite young from academies because
I don't know how Jay Tab got through, you know.
That's what a name.
Yeah.
Of all the names we've had on the podcast tonight, you bring out Jay Tab. I mean,
what was it saying? Like, it wasn't until everyone had been absolute brute. Like, how did he get through?
Yeah, I know. There's some. I know, but there is. For me, it was like I used to love playing against big players because they couldn't keep up with me. They couldn't turn like as quick as I could. It was, so for me, I think the physical attribute, certainly the one that's overrated, is size. I think, size doesn't matter, no matter what your wife tells you.
Adam, I can't believe it, honestly. We've had Thierry Henry, we've had Mateus, we've had Crook, we've had Bowen, and you bring out J Tab. Honestly, I'm lost. I'm lost, absolutely lost.
I'm good at it.
We've got a final question comes in from Jamie Sanderlands. He asked, do you want to manage in the Football League, or would you prefer to stay in non-league?
Do you know what? I think too far forward. I think it depends whatever arises. I'd like to see how far we can take it. I believe I've got enough knowledge and experience to be successful at the level we're now going into. And I think you can grow on that. And I think as well, again, we've seen managers move up from non-league recently into Football League. And I would. I'd certainly be proud to be part of. I get a buzz out of taking over a football club like Leicester. If you're taking over a football club that's in the Football League, that's got so much history about it, and you're moving up that ladder, why not? I actually said to my brother-in-law the other day, do you know what? Who knows where this could take us? Yeah. We'll see, and try and enjoy the journey while we're on it. But there's no reason why I believe in our ability as a partnership in terms of management. Look, we can take this as far as we want it to, really. So we'll see.
Definitely. I actually got one final question. Actually, sorry, this is just coming very late. I've only just seen this pop up. It comes in from my brother, so I'm getting the whole family involved tonight. He said, what was the feeling like representing your country? Let's finish on that.
Amazing. Another one regrets I had was I never got a cap for England. I was gutted. I got in the full squad twice. I got in the squad for the tournoi. I remember when Roberto Carlos did that ridiculous free kick.
Yeah.
For Brazil. Scored that. So I was in the squad for that, for England, for them, but I got injured whilst on the training camp with the England squad. But I think just being called up for it was, being part of that England squad, and I've got a picture of the squad, and it was, like I said, Beckham, Scholes, and Shearer, and it was just amazing. Again, dreams, what dreams are made of. And I remember getting the call from Glenn Hoddle was the manager, and as I said earlier, we touched on when I first started. Tottenham was my team, so to get a call from Hod the God telling me I was in the England squad was the thing dreams are made of, and it's quite funny. Because I remember, because normally what the process is, you get called in by your manager at the club you're playing for at the time. They say, we've been called into the England squad. Somebody's going to call you. Congratulations, blah, blah, blah. That didn't happen. So I'd only got a new mobile phone, and this is when mobile phones weren't great. They haven't been out a huge amount of time. I got a new mobile phone, and this number came. I didn't recognise the number. And I went, who's that? So I answered the phone, and I said, hello. They went, it's Glenn Hoddle here. And I told him to fuck off. Because I thought it was someone taking the piss. So I put the phone down. I then got another call from the same number. I left it and then called back again. And I thought I better answer it. And he said, no, it is actually Glenn Hoddle. So I had to kind of apologise profusely and listen to what Glenn Hoddle had to say about bringing me into the full England squad. So, yeah, that's a story for you.
Amazing stuff. Darren, absolute pleasure having you on the show tonight. Really, really appreciate your time. I think we've been at this nearly 3 hours. Incredible stuff just to kind of go through your journey and just talking through a range of issues. Really, really appreciate your time. Adam, anything you want to finish up on?
Just a very, very big thank you for coming on and talking to us, putting up with my pathetic blooming teleconferencing skills on Zoom, trying to get this set up. It was absolutely diabolical, but you hung in there for me.
You guys sounded quite cool by suggesting Zoom in the first place, like I'm right down with the kids.
Well, we've been putting it off because we have to pay for it. But do you know what? Everyone's asking us to do it. So we've managed to just invest, and I think it will be for the best.
Good.
Yeah.
It was a pleasure, guys. No problem at all.
No worries. If you guys have enjoyed the podcast, if you're watching from a YouTube perspective, make sure you hit the thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. If you are listening to this on the various podcasting platforms, make sure you leave us a 5-star review and also subscribe to the channel as well. That'd be very much appreciated. But until next time, as always, adios.